And let's get see if Annika wants to jump up. There's Ken. Okay, great. All right, so we'll just jump right into it. No air horn, or maybe air horn. Here's air horn. Okay.
We need a customary air horn.
Here we go. Customary air horn. Happy Friday. The first biggest story, and the music will end here in just a minute. The biggest story right now is that Facebook launches their $299 Ray-Ban Stories smart sunglasses, and in 6 countries, including the US, users can capture photo and video, listen to music, or take phone calls, which I missed that part during their demonstration yesterday, the phone calls part. Makes sense, though, because you can listen to music on them because they have speakers built into the frames. They've got 2 cameras.
It has Bluetooth.
Yes, it's based on Bluetooth. And there's a really good blog post by Harry McCracken, who's now at Fast Company. And for those who don't know, Harry is one of the legit OG tech geeks from back in the day. He's been a tech journalist since 91 when, the whole party was kind of getting started. And for the longest time, he was at PC World as the editor. And then...
Oh, that brings back memories.
I know, right? This is OG tech stuff. And then he was over at CNET for a bit. And then he went to Time and became editor at Time. And now he's at Fast Company as the tech editor at Fast Company. And his wife, Marie, who I work personally with, they are just lovely people. And Harry is legit as a geek. He's more of a geek than a journalist, but he's a journalist. And he's one of the great ones. And so he has done easily the best coverage of this so far at Fast Company. So I'm happily sharing his article on Fast Company to the Tech News Twitter account right now, so you can read that. And he does a deep dive on it. He's been using them. He tells you everything anyone could ever want to know about it, as he's known for doing. Just a fantastic article that he did. And he's got a little bit of an interview with Mark Zuckerberg about it. He showcases these interesting 3D-like effects that you can do with the photos that he shows in his blog post that I just tweeted out. And he shows what the video looks like. He shows what the weaknesses are. And essentially, the photos look like iPhone 1 photos, like the very first iPhone. So the photos look like, that photo clearly looks like a really old... What is that, a really old iPhone you're using for that photo? It looks like, But I wonder how long it will take for, it took us 13 years to go from iPhone 1, to where we are now or whatever. And, well, they came out in 2007, so it's, Jesus. 15 years. So how many years will it take for these glasses like this to have cameras that are similar to what we have now in the iPhones? But
do they need to? With AI upscaling, do you really need to have that these days?
Great question, because that's a great point. So, for example, what Chris correctly points out is there was even a headline last week, was there not? I mean, in the past 4 days, where it shows that you can take a really shitty low-resolution photo, put it into an AI, which is software, not hardware, and it will upscale it, upgrade it, beautify it, make it look like it was done on a much better camera. Fantastic.
So quick little 30-second and crash course on this. One of the coolest things about this is the way that they train it is you literally can take a shitty camera and put it right next to a really high-end camera, and you literally train the AI to basically train as a conversion between those two. Now, here's the magic part. If you make your own hardware and you can make enough of them to exist in the world, you can train your AI off of that and customize the algorithms for that hardware. This is what Google does with their pixel lines and stuff.
Yeah.
You can literally basically make it go way outperform the general case upscaling algorithms and make a custom conversion with it. They'll basically allow it to do those magical conversions. So if you are going into hardware and dipping your toe, this is something on their radar roadmap. Whether or not they're going to incorporate it in something a recent one, or whether it's going to be essentially something like 5-10 years from now, don't know. But the tech exists and the researchers are playing with it and the results are gorgeous.
It's a brilliant point that it's not so much about the hardware of the camera anymore. The AI can simulate good camera and lenses and whatnot. But as a first go around, the response seems to be quite positive. And I know we're lucky to have Michelle from Facebook, who joins us every day. So I'd love to hear any thoughts that she's able to share with us. I have to imagine Facebook's pretty happy with the response. They're getting, as expected, a lot of response. The response tends to be fairly positive. I'm curious, anyone on stage who is eager to get one, has a strong take one way or the other, but I want to take advantage of Shira being back for today to give her pass the mic to Shira to see what did you think of these Facebook glasses. Have you seen any articles about it yet, Shira?
So this is the first I've heard about it, but I actually just tweeted about it because the thought that it brought to my mind was, you know how people are on the fence about the whole metaverse concept,
right?
And whether or not that's going to be a real thing or whether that was just like some collective quarantine delusion. And I think that this makes it very much more real, right? Because if you have this whole aspect of tech that's now bringing these things that were once on your phone, and I know that people tried to do this with Google Glass or even Google Cardboard, and you have Oculus, etc., but when it's something that's as accessible and as portable as Ray-Bans, then it really brings this concept of entering a digital world of augmented reality, almost like the Magic Leap concept of mixed reality, to fruition in a way that hadn't really been done before. So that makes me really bullish on that. So that would be my take on it.
I like
Notice how they styled it actually like actual glasses rather than spectacles, which with Snap tried with things, and they hand out on Santa Monica Beach, but they couldn't quite make it the numbers they needed to. Although I love the charging container they had for that. I don't know what they're doing for this one.
Chris, I was just thinking the same thing, and it touches on what Shira said. So I think what Shira said triggered the same thought in both of us, which is interesting that these glasses look like normal glasses, where Snapchat tried to do something fancy and funny and make these glasses that clearly are not normal looking glasses. They look a little fruity. Like there's obviously something a little unique about them. Same with the Google Glass kudos and credit to them for being 10 years ahead on that. But that looked super fruity. I mean, that you're basically waving a big flag, like, look at me, I'm crazy, I have this weird tech thing on my face. Where this is the first time where it's not. You're intentionally not doing that. Spectacles did it a little bit. These, for some reason,
because Luxottica is involved, right?
Of course,
Luxottica, that's the big one.
I know, but they're intentionally using the Ray-Ban Wayfarer classic look and not intentionally not fucking with it. And by doing that, I think it removes a lot of the barriers that a lot of people had about trying something like this. Because I'm looking at these and I'm like, well, worst case, I have a pair of sunglasses. I mean, with the spectacles, I'm now stuck with a pair of ridiculous looking glasses that somehow make me feel like I need to take advantage of the cameras and the video and the whatever. With these ones, oh well, it's a pair of sunglasses that just happen to have an extra bunch of features that I can use if I want to. I don't feel compelled to use them, and more importantly, I don't have people walking up to me all the time asking me questions about it, which I clearly would get very bored of after 2 or 3 days. So I want to turn to Michelle to see what kind of thoughts you might have or insights you might. I have to imagine Facebook's very happy with the reaction thus far.
Yeah, I think so far, I would say everyone is excited with the launch. And I have to say, from a product perspective, obviously it will evolve, but the quality is quite amazing as well. Not being biased, but I tried both versions, the prescription version and the sunglasses.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's quite mind-blowing, the quality of videos that can produce.
Yeah.
But I think it's still very early stage, and there will be like more advanced and robust version to support much more use cases. Can share more on that, but I think we can look at this as V1.
So Evan, who joins us usually in the other time zone, says he ordered them like while the live event was going on. And because it has speakers built into the frames near your ear.
It's like the Bose ones.
Yes.
Yeah, the Bose ones are fantastic.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see how well these work for Clubhouse in that sense.
Tyler, these have dual cameras, right? And
yes.
Spaced out. So that also brings up a bunch too, because if they've canted them inwards a little bit, you have some depth perception there that they can do to add to the AI algorithm.
Yes.
And then remember,
It's going to be pretty limited, but it's at least something. The thing is,
maybe
you really need
back
to
in
have like
like
some pretty nice
May.
sensor packages to basically be able to get like world space. Just 2 cameras isn't really enough to get stabilization. The problem is that once you lose tracking, regaining it can be very disruptive for any kind of user experience type kind of thing. But it's at least something to get your algorithms at least getting somewhere.
But they're probably not coplanar. What I'm getting at? They're probably not coplanar, so they're probably giving extra depth to it.
It does allow in the Harry McCracken Fast Company article that I just tweeted out to the Twitter account. It shows a guy riding a bike near the Golden Gate Bridge, and it has this. It gives you the ability to have this really interesting 3D like effect to your photos.
So Google is experimenting with similar versions for like monocular stuff, where it's synthetic effect added after the fact. They're using the same idea for AI upscaling, but essentially instead of applying to basically give fake depth to it, it's actually a pretty good technique. But you still need to have like a really large training data set to make it work.
Yeah, Zuckerberg himself in this Harry McCracken article refers to how he's been using them while skiing, surfing, canoeing, etc. Which that itself is a really interesting use cases. That
sounds like they're targeting Red's market. Well, not Red's market. Sorry. GoPro with stuff. Be a hero, right?
Well, he also by mentioning, he says he's worn them surfing implies that they're waterproof. Actually, which I hadn't heard anybody mention that yet.
Those are the Zuckerberg grade ones.
They'll migrate that technology into the military frames because Oakley's got the contracts for a lot of the military, light glasses and stuff. And
Microsoft swept that one clean with things. I mean, there's only so many to it. What was it, like 25 billion or something with that? There's only so many left.
So he comments that the onboard memory can hold a maximum of 35 30-second videos, or 500 photos at a time, after which you must do a phone transfer to free up space. And the battery life
as an accessory.
Yeah, the battery life is rated at 6 hours of moderate use, but I drained the glasses in a couple of hours on one bike ride. You probably want to tote the charging case, even though it's a pocket strainer, and that might be the logistical hardware headache for many folks, especially when they're first. I think, honestly, that might be a problem when people are first in the honeymoon phase of using their new gadget, where they overuse it, and then once you get more into more actual legitimate use case usage, you probably won't need to carry around the battery case, because you do need the battery case to charge it. I'm sorry, the sunglass case is also kind of the charger.
What if the lens? What if the lens is also a solar panel?
Not a surface area. Not a surface area.
Maybe version 2, Cheryl. Yeah.
The power consumption. So what you're talking about can work. The problem is that it's not enough surface area to generate enough wattage. Currently, the cameras are actually fairly battery intensive and energy intensive. So a solar panel would do trickle charge. It would take you like a week to charge something you could operate for only like a minute.
So here's an interesting little detail. A journalist from BuzzFeed named Katie covered up the little LED. There's a little white LED that turns on when you're recording. And Katie from BuzzFeed covered up the LED with tape and marker ink, like a Sharpie marker, to hide the light. And then was told by Facebook's VP that doing so was a violation of the Glass's terms of service. But anyone who's set on taking covert photos for truly nefarious purposes, such as stalking or movie theater privacy, has better options. And if the glasses sell well, they could become too familiar to be used without calling attention to themselves.
I do have a question, Michelle. How is Facebook thinking internally about the glass hole effect? Google had a very rocky roll up for theirs with things. How is Facebook avoiding that having all the tech nerds that adopted first go into the nearest bar? And I guess I don't know if COVID might make that a little more challenging for that particular thing, but how are they avoiding some of Google's missteps when they were trying to roll out a similar product?
What do you mean are you referring from a brand safety perspective?
There was just it's all I don't know if it's even a journalistically generated false.
I saw it firsthand. It was shocking, essentially, how they went from something that was like, "Whoa, this looks really cool," and you're jumping out of like blimps and skydiving your way into an arena, into a tech demo thing. And Eric Schmidt was like, beaming with this. This was one of his favorite toys.
Yeah.
And I talked to people that essentially were like walking around with glasses for things, and he was like, this was the thing he was obsessed with. And then to go from that to you walk into a bar and people basically ask you to leave because essentially they don't want some Google guys around there with things. Like it was brutal, essentially, the backlash on that.
Yeah, there was quite.
I think that's a good point, but we also want people to look at it as sunglasses. That also has an additional features, but we clearly the go-to-market clearly talks about, or the positioning around the fact that you still have to respect people's privacy and so on. And the jurisdiction varies depending on countries. There are countries even where publicly you can record someone and so on.
So Google Glass came out in 2012, which back in so this is nearly 10 years ago, and
ancient.
But the point is, we've actually, this sounds really strange to say, but there's been a bit of a social evolution when it relates to media and photography and ubiquitous cameras and microphones since even then. So what I mean is, when Google Glass came out, people still had sort of the old school mentality that, I can, I'm not expecting to be photographed or recorded anywhere I go. That I would say fundamentally, subconsciously, on a cultural level, that has sort of changed. We now kind of expect that there are cameras everywhere recording everything, and the question is, and it's a valid one, Chris, is have we transitioned far enough down that line where there's no longer this expectation of, who is this person with these glasses? And by the way, I think this speaks to the physical nature of these, where the Google Glass looked like robotic alien technology and really called out to it.
That was a big issue. It just was too geeky.
There's that, and
you're talking about the Wayfarers that are iconic for males and females.
They don't seem threatening. And by the way, it seems like a convenience. It's a replacement for your smartphone's camera. It's just an ease. It's a convenience of not having to take your phone out of your pocket, because now anybody in that same bar would say, well, now we know anyone can take out their phone on a split second. So now that everyone have them, back in 2011, that wasn't really the case. Not everybody had a smartphone in their pocket. They could just whip out and start recording at any time. Now everyone knows everyone can. So the fact that you have your camera on your glasses and not in your pocket, it's
not
just
a big deal.
It isn't.
If you think about it, the whole evolution of those gadgets that we're using. 10 years ago, if someone was paying with their wrist, with their watch, you're crazy. You wouldn't believe that it's possible. And today it's fine. I think it's just this evolution in between all those different devices that we're using, and there's never going to be a full transition only from phone to glasses, fully. Right? It's very smart if you think about it, how they're teaching us to use all of our senses and all of our limbs to interact with technology, and they're kind of occupying every free space that a human has to be able to introduce more hardware.
Yeah, so I just got, hold on, I got to steal the mic. Hold on, I know, thank you, Chris. I have chills right now because when I saw Hans raise his hand, because for those who don't know, Hans, who joins us every day, deserves the red carpet royal treatment here. Hans is the creator of Be My Eyes, and I already know where this is going, and I'm already getting chills about it. That Be My Eyes has won an award from Apple itself as one of the best designed apps of, I believe, all of 2020. It was for 2020, was it, Hans, that you won the award?
2021.
2021.
Yeah, and Apple is very selective. I think they only give out 3 of those design awards. Anyway, Hans won the award for one of the best apps of 2021, and deservedly so. Be My Eyes essentially allows you to take out, for a blind person who needs to know what is in front of them and is not able to, maybe they're holding a jar of something and they need to know what is in the jar. And so now they can open Hans's app, Be My Eyes, just turn it on, and then it gets instantly broadcasted to people who can help and assist and tell them, oh, you're holding a jar of peanut butter, for example, or strawberry jelly and not blackberry jelly, or whatever. And these are trivial examples, and of course, there's endless, much more meaningful examples. And so, Hans, what is going through your mind with these glasses?
Well, thank you for this wonderful introduction. The thing I was two things before you and I totally agree that we as a population has been more uh, photographed than ever the last 10 years, so we are more used to that, absolutely. But still, those glasses do have a flashing light in your face when they are recording. And I think that would still trigger someone sitting in a bar with someone that's not their wife or something like that, that they don't want to be. The fact that these glasses have those flashing light when they are recording might kind of do the trick still. And that's also, I assume, why this journalist wanted to kind of cover that.
Yeah.
To exactly hide that she was or he was recording. And for more personal reasons, I have been, of course, looking into glasses that Be My Eyes could use.
Right.
And it would be so nice if we could kind of tap into this photo video stream and use that in Be My Eyes, but I assume that's not possible. But that was kind of what we had hoped with Google glasses. They were way too expensive, but I think if they had become successful, they would have been cheaper by now. But that would be super interesting to hear if Facebook is open to other platforms to kind of use the video photo stream.
Oh my God!
Just saying this,
Michelle, you can
Michelle,
connect
you
Michelle.
need to hook him up. I'm serious. Facebook.
No, I
Yeah,
will.
Michelle.
I will
very much.
definitely. Yeah, I'll definitely insure him to the right POC, and they can take it
Yay.
from
Yeah.
there. I can't give an
Facebook
answer to
needs some
whether.
good PR. This is a quick way of generating exactly what you guys need, and
Yeah.
will actually do some social good. This is one of the few things
Be
that's
huge.
it's a quick win for
It's a
everyone.
slam dunk for humanity.
Yeah.
Look
Huge.
what you have done, Tyler.
That would. I'm getting goosebumps. God, that would be. I would. Oh my God. If
It's
Facebook
good karma. Good karma.
Facebook acquires Be My Eyes and rolls it into the glasses somehow, holy shit.
You could offer independence, right? Like basically just have hazard awareness. Let them live a regular life, but have things watching out for them. Have people just watching out for them. And when bad things happen, or if they're about to hit something, alert them, be their eyes. Beyond just, the tasks that have already revolutionized their life. Like just be their guardian angel too.
Okay, so again, I call people's attention to the Harry McCracken article in Fast Company. He's just done a beautiful deep dive on them. And there's another. So that's the top story of the day. The Facebook Ray-Ban glasses, and I'm eager for Evan and anyone else who ordered them. Kind of when they were live streaming the event to really let us know how they work in a Clubhouse context, because that in itself is super cool. Because you have like Shira, who says she's on the bus and listening to us now. Would that work with a pair of sunglasses? I love that idea, honestly.
Hey Tyler, imagine your conferences of the future. It's not you send out invitations,
right.
or you get tickets. You just send out the glasses to all the people that will be speaking or participating. And
that's genius.
$300 pair just shows up in the mail. I mean, people are willing to spend thousands of dollars for these events for tickets and everything. Just send them the glasses, and they can all participate. And
what I like about it is the idea that, because when you're wearing earbuds, you kind of distance yourself from the people around you. Like, people don't want to interrupt you because they feel like you're listening to a podcast or something, or an audiobook. And then with glasses, it's less of that. You're kind of just casually listening to a podcast, and people can still approach you.
That one's kind of socially hard. The only thing is that
they will have to have either the prescription lenses available, or you always need to get two, right? Because in the closed space, you're not going to wear sunglasses when you're in the conference.
Did they make a transitions model?
Not yet, but you can have. I mean, I have two, so you have to swap for now.
Yeah,
I guess that will come later on as well.
You could go.
Tyler, on
Go ahead, Chris.
On that part about the glasses, because I have the Bose, they're wonderful, but it's challenging because people don't really realize you're listening to something,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden they start talking to you, and you're like, hang on 1 second.
Yeah, somebody
You can just
pointed
take
out
like a giant Facebook sticker and put it on the side. Yeah.
Well, no, but this goes back to, we're not that far away. I can't recall what the headline was, but something around Google, or sorry, it was an Apple patent, and the Apple patent is around the idea that the glasses recognize that somebody's trying to talk to you, and so that they
that's crazy.
lower the music. Because
yeah, you could just give a social signal or whatever, like you hold like a hand or something like that. That's gonna be different each culture, but that could be actually. There's a way that you can do that. It's actually kind of clever.
Tyler, did you ever get the Pro Max, the over-ear iPods?
I did not.
Okay, yeah, they have the transparency mode, and
right.
you can actually adjust it to different levels, and it's really good. I mean, like.
So check this out. So well, by the way, for those who missed these headlines, these are truly some of the coolest headlines we've seen on a new tech angle, which is there's two. Earbuds, for lack of a better word, that form factor of AirPods that somebody has tested.
Apple makes a fortune on these things now.
Yeah, they do. It's a huge industry by itself.
It's a percentage when they basically did here's the amount of revenue that we've made per year.
Yeah.
They make more money on the earbuds than Spotify makes on their entire catalog with things. That's insane.
It's big business. So
it's a percentage of their revenue per quarter.
Yeah.
It's just like, here's the earbuds. It's nuts.
Yeah. So, but the point is that these AirPods, that form factor, lots of companies make, wireless earbuds, but the idea is that they could now, somebody filed a patent and proved it working in a lab where you could train them to basically through I know this sounds ridiculous, but we read the head. It's actually like, Stanford University lab has figured out a way to, when you're thinking a thought, the AirPods are able to detect this minuscule electrical signal that's coming from the inside of your ear based on when you think or move your eyes up or to the left or whatever. That minuscule movement of moving your eyes up to the left is detectable from the AirPods, and that AirPods can then trigger an action in your phone to turn down the music, for example. So
are they detecting the muscle groups from the eyeballs with things with that? Because
unmic your Clubhouse,
right?
That's the hard thing to do.
Well, I mean, that's like your eyes go up and down kind of thing. So it's just like any muscle impulse anywhere in your body, it has a detectable electromagnetic signature.
That's what I mean.
It can be detected. It can
it's
be characterized.
It's electromagnetic signature. Yes. So the point. Yeah, I know, it's super interesting. So the idea is that you could then, in the not so distant future, control your phone and or even your laptop via Bluetooth that's connected to the AirPods as an interface. And by the way, Mercedes 24 hours ago had a headline that their futuristic car will include a headband, and this headband will essentially do the exact same thing. It's detecting these electromagnetic signatures that
cool, because I'm looking at of course I'm looking at the ocular the muscle groups with things. There's one that goes right by the eyeball right there with things, so going back, it goes way far back.
Right.
If you're able to detect those are going to send off very small, that's a very faint signal. If they're able to detect that, that's
correct.
Huge.
Right. Now
that means you don't need to have something mounted in front of the eye to do these detections.
Correct.
Because the RF, because what happens is the RF field changes, and then the AI is going to adjust for that. So they've studied lots of subjects to determine the RF field change whenever that happens, right? So they have the beam splitting microphones.
This is huge because we have eye detections. We have eye trackers now that you can use for the calibration routines. We didn't have those reliable enough until relatively recently. But if you combine both of those together,
exactly,
that's going to drain the training data to actually draw that characterization and now that sensor. That's fantastic. That won't take actually very long to do at all. Actually, now that we have those, we have got like 3 of the components for that. It's great.
This is what I want to point out. It seems like science fiction, but it's honestly not. It's working in labs at the moment.
It's not for your brain. It's the muscle groups with things.
We got Charles down there too.
Okay, thanks.
Charles and Jay's here.
Okay, Shira, what's up?
Question.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just curious. I want to read more about this, both the AirPod detection and the headband, but I'm Googling it and can't seem to find anything. Okay. Where can I find these articles?
Somebody will find it and DM it to me, and then I'll tweet it out. So we shared them in the past week or so. Both of these, the AirPod one from some university lab research project, and then the Mercedes ones was like a headline that they put out themselves that the upcoming versions of the car will include this headband, and it will, as Chris correctly, intuitively assumed, it is based on the signals in the back of your head, and that you would then control aspects of the car, not the driving of the car. The car will ostensibly have a kind of autonomous driving capabilities, but you'll control the radio and the air conditioner and all the video game console inside of the car through your thoughts, so that you don't have to physically touch the dashboard anymore. That's kind of the point, is it will be able to control our phones and the dashboards of our cars through our thoughts, essentially. But you'll have to train it with these signatures. And I had firsthand personal experience with this, which I've mentioned the anecdote of this many times already, which was the way I engaged with it was a little soccer game where it's a soccer ball that is a robotic little soccer ball that can move based on your thoughts, and you can control the ball rolling around on the floor with your thoughts, but so can your friend simultaneously. So they set up a little soccer field. It's only like a little 2-meter by 2-meter soccer field with two little goals, and you play against your friend to try and push the ball into each other's goal. So you're playing soccer with your brains, essentially, without actually touching the ball. And it only takes a minute to learn how to move the ball. And so this is my point, is if you can move the ball with your brain, well, that's you're moving it in a lot of different directions. So those are each of those signals could be extrapolated into commands to your phone or your laptop or your car's dashboard or whatever, or your glasses. And this is why I brought all of this up, because in the not so distant future, your glasses work on signals like, hey, Facebook, take a photo. It's that these new $299 Ray-Ban glasses do that, actually. And you can say, hey, Facebook, answer the phone call that's coming in my pocket. So why not replace that with this, convert the neural impulse signal into a command that we're talking about, like moving the soccer ball. And so when somebody comes up and tries to talk to you, you just think the thought, turn off the music, and it turns off. So
tying into that, there's another company called Mudra. They're out of Israel. If you go to getmudra.com, they have a wearable bracelet type kind of thing. Now, what's interesting about this bracelet is that it intercepts just being very brief. I've worked with a lot of technologies with things. This is one that was remarkable in that it took less than 15 seconds. Like, you put it on, and you learn it very quickly. It's bound over Bluetooth. You're looking at essentially a thing. It's taking the nerve impulse that are essentially going through your hands, and you basically practice a few things. Like, I can pick up the thing, I can move it around. It's like, okay, here's cool. But what's really interesting is he's like, okay, now put your hand in your pocket and don't move your hand, but imagine moving your hand. And that's where it gets really weird really quickly, because essentially you get to the point where you're not moving any muscles in your body, but you are signaling the intent, and essentially the algorithms are able to pick up on that with the sensors. This is a general case technique that apparently can be applied to muscle groups all throughout the body. And it's essentially a way of tying into the nervous system without actually having to do anything invasive, and without having to basically digest a lot of brain signals. But it still counts as a brain-computer interface. We're going to start seeing these technologies everywhere, because what it looks like is that it's actually relatively cheap to do. The sensors are finally there. The FPGAs are there. We can do this stuff essentially in a ubiquitous fashion, and it looks like it could happen much faster than anticipated, because they were trying to do it much more complicated in the past. It looks like we've got a critical mass of components right now, so this could happen really quick.
There was also an Apple patent recently about clicking your teeth as a mouse click kind of input signal, which I imagine
you only need two axes, like X and Y with things, and then maybe like a third if you really want to do. If you can just do dwell time, that's enough for basically that for most interfaces. But if you really want to have a click, you can do that too. But if you only need two axes and a click, that's not a lot of signals to reverse engineer.
Yeah, but my point is, maybe version 2 of these glasses and AirPods in the near future could have this teeth clicking, and they could easily sense that, by the way. Any AirPods, this could be technically trivial to implement. which
I
is
think an easier target for them would be voice commands with stuff, because essentially they already have the microphone feed. Just put a little
it
AI
is, but
chip on there with things.
the problem is people forget these voice commands. I mean, even intelligent people like myself struggle with remembering like what was the pause of the voice command. It'd be nice to just click my teeth twice to turn off and on the music in my AirPods.
I'm saying that when you click your teeth, it makes a sound.
Yeah, no, I know, but I want my music to pause when, or my either from my glasses or from my AirPods when somebody walks up and starts wanting to dialogue with me, and I want to be able to pause the music momentarily or whatnot. So
there was a Navy sensor that had something similar, but theirs was a tongue sensor interface. It was very unusual. They actually used it for like the deep divers, for like frogmen or whatever.
Mhm.
And the idea was essentially that you could actually have like a sort of personal awareness sonar, essentially for a local thing that could actually sense like a map on the tongue with things. Like there's some really weird wearable UX innovations that are available and out there. When you start combining them together, you get some really weird interfaces.
So BB in the audience, bless her, found the article I was looking that I mentioned and was looking for. Retrofitting wireless earbuds neural issue. Retrofitting wireless earbuds to detect neural signals and issue smartphone commands. So for Shira and anyone else who wanted that article, I just tweeted it to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW. And you can read all about that, what we've been ranting about here for the past few minutes. Yes, Karam.
Yeah, just wanted to actually bring in the perspective a little. We've been, sort of bringing in Google Glass. I used it over a year and a half, and we are talking about like 9 years ago. So, first of all, like if comparing that with something which is just the camera, it was entirely different breed altogether. So we have to actually look at it from that perspective. I remember the last, upgrade came in. I could actually take a picture with just blinking my eye, and it's not just about the camera. It was actually the voice command. And imagine that if the Google Home would have been actually built into the Google Glass, and it was actually going through the different phases and upgradation of the different versions of it, it would have been just out of this world thing by now. Second thing, it also had the screen. So that's what we are forgetting, that, something to actually have a screen in front of you all the time is entirely different perspective, so we are talking about actually taking out the phone. Forget about the phone. You have the actual phone in front of you, and you are controlling that device with your voice command. And that we used to do like 8 years ago. Imagine what would be the case by now. So that's the second thing in terms of the voice command. Eye movement was continuously being monitored. So that was the initiation of it. Like when, you blink it, you take a picture, and there were like many more things to come before they actually dump it. Thirdly, in terms of the audio, there was no, earbuds, and it still had the same feeling as hearing the voice in your phone, and you were making phone calls by just saying, "Call Tyler," and that's it. It would make a call to Tyler, and that's it. So it was like three things in one thing. It's not just the camera, not just the video, but it's literally a screen in front of you.
Yeah,
so just wanted to bring in that perspective.
Thanks, Karam. And I have to imagine that the Facebook Ray-Ban glasses, because they do voice commands already, that the fact that they tie into Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, that this idea of saying call Cami has to be coming soon, because that's pure software.
Or send text message or something to
someone. That is pure software, which means it's just a matter of time before they rig that up.
Also, it doesn't actually have to do the processing locally. If you have a phone nearby, you can basically just send it a clip and have the phone do all the processing on it. I mean, that's something where it's more about just the fact that you have to QA test all of the bazillion combinations of phones out there, which I mean, Facebook's tried to launch a phone like 4 or 5 times by now with things, and there's a reason why they don't get to do it. This is the kind of the way of basically establishing it.
Oh, that's a great point. Now they interface with your phone. Yeah, that's interesting.
Right, but the thing is, like, smartphones are kind of, it's not that they're on their way out, but they kind of are with things, and it's kind of like this is establishing a thing where rather than basically racing to the phones and trying to ask for permission from Google and Apple to compete on the platform, the idea is that they can make a stakehold on getting all the engineers that can make the VR headsets, the AR headsets, the wearables, whatever we have thing there, and the idea is the phone makers will be coming to them afterwards is the long-term play, but it takes a very long investment cycle to basically make that work.
Tyler, what's the sensor stack on it? Do we know if it's got any kind of eGPS or
it's probably pretty minimal.
Nobody has done a hardware breakdown yet. Like Tom's Hardware will probably do that as soon as
I can tell you right now
you can take it to the bank. They have some kind of geolocation in there because
No,
remember that's what they're
not
using.
necessarily. Here's the thing, Chris. When they're working on this, essentially one of the things you see that they brag about on that is somewhere in there is they'll talk about the weight, like how many grams that it weighs. Because one of the things that for long term, whether or not people actually wear this on a day to day
You're
basis,
right. It doesn't have its own cellular radio, so it doesn't
yeah,
need
yeah.
to
So,
do
so
it
it's
on the.
going to
It doesn't
basically
need to
pair
do it
to the
there.
phone and basically
I'm just gonna
slave whatever
offload
it
it to
can
the
off of that.
phone.
Yep.
Now that's just the test.
Yeah.
Tyler, Ranjit
Whoa,
here.
whoa, whoa,
I,
Renjit, back down the mic. You're about 50%. You're super loud. There you go.
sorry. I messaged you about this. We talked about the sensors or the data which we can collect from the eyes. So I'm just wondering whether do they have any kind of sensors, and is that the reason why they collaborated with Ray-Ban, because they want to keep a low profile? Since anything FB launches, we have a security or a privacy concern.
No, no,
That's
no,
an
no, no. They have to partner with Luxottica because they have a monopoly on the market. It's like 90% of all
yeah.
glasses manufactured worldwide
It's not
are
even the
Luxottica.
manufacturers; it's all the stores too. Like
They
every
have
every
everything.
sunglass store you go into is owned by them. Every optical boutique is owned by them.
Every eye doctor has some sort of like monopoly thing tied in with them. It's like basically they're the
That
gatekeepers of the market.
this is why in April when everyone was like, "Oh, we think Apple's going to do AR," I'm like,
And it's like
"Hey
that's
guys,
cute,
what's SLR doing right now?"
right? You have to
Amazing that
get permission from Luxottica to compete in that market effectively
I
for that
wonder
because
to
industrially don't have a thing.
in what sense did the Snapchat's spectacles touch with Luxottica? As hard as it
They
is to
didn't.
do anything with a frame that fits on your face.
How many users does Facebook have?
Okay. Here's a key difference. Here's a key difference with things. So glasses, essentially, what they did is they made it cool. They made it basically socially acceptable to wear. I know that sounds kind of a weird thing, but this is like they would pay for every celebrity to basically have their paired glasses when they're on a red carpet, and which ones would pair which with which. They would basically have politicians that would basically have certain things. Those sorts of long term things. It take a long time to establish that kind of cultural buy-in of what's socially acceptable to wear and what's not. Now, Facebook has more marketing power than Luxottica does, but the fact is that they have not basically launched physical products in the way that they basically Luxottica has with the supply chain, the brand partnerships, etc. So this is one of those weird kind of like they both have to basically play on each other's turf to make this work. But if they do it, Luxottica has a lock on the next 20 years of the market. So it's going to be really strange to see how they play it out.
Renjit teased up an interesting point that I want to end on before we go into the other headlines, which is that when the Google Glass came out, as Karam was talking about, back then the privacy concerns were exclusively regarding the people on the outside of the glass in the restaurant and their privacy.
Oh, interesting.
And now we've culturally evolved to be more curious about the wearer's privacy of the glasses, which was not a concern last time at all about Google Glass. Like that was never, ever, ever raised. So it's interesting to see how the tides have turned with regard to privacy. So then the second biggest headline.
Tyler,
Yes.
Tyler, I was just going to say.
Tyler,
Don't leave
before
the
you
headline
move
yet.
on to topic, I have something to contribute to this one,
Go.
and I must step off the
Go
call
ahead.
to go to
Go ahead.
work. I just think this would be a good time to share this
Sure.
because there's been such a discussion that's relevant.
Go.
There is a technology that's currently going through trials called Ear Switch.
Okay.
EARSWITCH. And rather than picking up on small brain signals, it actually allows the user to use a small muscle that's in the ear canal that's voluntarily under control. And in that regard, you can switch things. So it can be it can be twinned to whatever you choose it to. It would just be that you twitch your little ear. Ding, 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 ding. It's not very visible to anyone looking at you that you're doing it, but it is entirely in your control. It's something I'm contributing to in the next couple of weeks. I'll be going in to do a physical trial and inspection, but not everyone has this capacity.
Yeah.
So at the moment, they're trying to find out what proportion of the population has it.
Oh,
so
cool.
Since
is it related?
This discussion is on these topics, and there's been so many interested voices, I would encourage people to look up.
I just tweeted it out to the Tech News Twitter account.
Is it related to TMJ?
I'm afraid
Lockjaw?
I couldn't tell you.
Because lockjaw is like that there's that joint right there, and it's directly linked to your ear. Usually people that get a lot of ear infections also get lockjaw. I don't know.
Okay.
So
No, I couldn't say this is for that at all. This is, I mean, it may be that people who get TMJ are or are not in the group of people who have voluntary control of this very small muscle. But I'm afraid I'm not able to tell you. But maybe if you do some more reading or encounter the
yeah,
research group,
I
you
want to
could
read
ask that
from the
question.
website, which I just tweeted out to the Twitter account. It says they're from the University of Bath in the UK. And it
Yes.
says, unlocking communication for all. Your ear is not just for listening. It will control your environment. The ear switch places control in your ear. Sensors that detects intentional movement of your eardrum by one of the smallest muscles in your body. Squeeze or tense the muscle, and a sensor in your earphone or hearing aid powered by ear switch will control your device. Change tracks, volume, operate your head cam, answer your phone, read your text, control your game, call for help, or select the icon you are looking at with eye tracking. The ear click is the new invisible mouse click.
Yeah, that's
Tyler,
it.
but can I
So
just say,
I
will
need
it
to
be
jump off now, but
inclusive?
I leave you with
It's
that.
beautiful, yeah.
And
Thank you, Murray.
look into it and
Mari,
see what you think.
but will it be inclusive if it's not available to everyone?
At the moment, it's in trials, and for the reason that they're not certain whether everyone can do it, and certainly people who are offered the opportunity to try the let's say the basic test, not everyone says, "Oh yeah, I can do that." Personally, I can, and I've always been able to, but I didn't know what it was I was doing. I've done it since I was a little kid, so it's possibly that some people either haven't yet become aware of that channel for themselves, or it may be like other parts of the population. Some people can roll their tongue, some people can wiggle their ears or their nose independently, or raise one eyebrow but not the other. It may be that it is going to be specific to individuals as to whether or not they can or can't use it. But there are very few technologies or situations which are universal for everybody. Yep. So I don't think that we shouldn't investigate it or adopt it or make it available for those who can use it, because there may be other people who find other aspects of other
Go for it, Mari.
technologies not useful.
Gold standard for inclusive accessibility design is where you give the maximum number of options possible, because every person has their own unique setup with things. And what you do is you create a basic standard that essentially that the majority of the population can use, and then you basically crank up the accessibility options to the max. One of the really cool things that Apple actually does with their long-range telemetry is they actually, whenever they have advanced features, they actually typically roll them out to the accessibility population first, which is extremely basically commendable. If you go into your iPhone settings, your iPad settings, and you bump around the accessibility stuff, you will see all the buttons for all these really advanced technologies and things that don't have really, you don't really see them anywhere else in the interface with things, but you can turn them on and see essentially things. What Apple actually does is they actually monitor that long range and actually use that to basically see for power users essentially the features they actually try to roll out essentially to the mainline platform later on. And I think this is a really, really important trend to emphasize with things, is that rather than basically using accessibility at the end of the design cycle of, oh yeah, we just throw on a few color splotches for some colorblind people or something and maybe ship this thing and go. Accessibility at the very beginning of the design cycle actually leads to much more powerful designs that everyone can use.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. We should start with accessible. But to answer your question, I don't know whether or not this technology will be universal, because at the moment it is not clear whether or not people can be taught who are unaware currently how to do this. Anyway, I've got to jump
Thank
off
you,
now,
Murray.
so I wish you well. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, Murray.
So Nicholas is has many years in the AR VR space, and so I wanted to hear what any thoughts you might have about the Facebook glasses. And then Charles is a co-founder of America's largest facial recognition company. So I'm curious how far off and what does the future have in store for us when people have facial recognition built into glasses, so they can know everybody walking past in a heartbeat. And it'll probably obviously be users of Clearview, which is currently almost exclusively law enforcement authorities and government agencies, although we have to assume that some countries might already have technologies like this in place. So first, Nicholas.
Yeah, so some comments on the Ray-Ban stories from the guy who worked at the wearable camera company
Yeah.
Narrative 9 years ago. Um, yeah, it's very reminiscent of the discussion that took place
Yes.
then. It was the time of the Google Glass, and it's an interesting, but I think sparse release. I think this is the beginning of a platform that will be more intertwined with AR, VR. I'm pretty sure that in a month when we have the VR AR conference, the Connect
Oh, in
conference with
October, right?
Facebook, we'll see, yeah, we'll see more integrations between those, the glasses, and like they didn't even mention AR filters in the post production for these images, these content. They merely touched upon the 3D aspect of having two cameras, so that will come into play more. But yeah, I think it's interesting. It was too. They're not clearly not subsidizing this in the same way that they're doing with the
Right.
VR. So the Quest costs the same, but it has much more in it. So it'll be
That's a
interesting
great
to
point.
see.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're the
yeah.
same price.
What's the sales
Right.
target here?
They're
Yeah,
the same price, but my God, you get a lot more with a Quest 2 than with these. Yeah. Um,
yeah.
I was also just gonna say that there's the brand aspect from
mhm.
Ribbon, which
Oh yeah.
is also has to be taken into account into the pricing.
Oh, for sure, for sure, and the just the reach through the distribution
Right.
channels. But I wonder what the sales goal is with this. Like, what will be a success for Facebook?
I I
Do they
think they
sort of
have to.
want to sell a few hundred
I think they
thousand?
have to. Given the lack of traction with Google Glass and even Snapchat Spectacles, they should go into this without any expectations in mind, knowing there's a high possibility of non-adoption. I mean, that just
Yeah,
if it does get mass adoption, it'll be the first breakthrough of its kind like this. So I think leave it with a lot of potential upside surprise and go into it with modest ambitions, so to speak. If they come out with
yeah,
any kind of claims, a lot of people are looking to do a celebratory dance of any Facebook failures. So the way to avoid that is just go in it with without stating any kind of ambitions.
yeah, yeah. They're kind of cautious. Just the amount of limited amount of markets they're
Yeah,
releasing in, just Italy, outside the English
yeah.
speaking ones. And lastly, there's a word, there's a term that comes into light, a throwback to the old days. We talked a lot about surveillance. So there's surveillance, which is valence from above, watching from above, but surveillance is watching from below. And I think this is a very important product in that line
Of
of thought,
surveillance.
that
Yeah.
traditions. Yeah. So Sue, SOUS, valence.
SOUS. Oh, interesting. Why not subvalence? Hmm.
Because Sir is
Okay.
French, so Sue is French
Okay.
too.
Oh, there you go. Alrighty. So, Charles, any thoughts on glasses and how do we? Is there any known examples of any of the government agencies globally that are tapping into their facial recognition systems through glasses yet?
Yes, there is.
Not that we know of. But I would just say, Facebook is very much disliked by our intelligence apparatus. So I'll be very surprised if they let something like this go through. Of course, Facebook has funded the ACLU lawsuit against Clearview in Illinois, and so that's kind of an
Oh, I didn't
interesting
know. Is that known?
issue.
I mean, it's public. It's in the
I don't know how public that is, but it is known to the New York
yeah.
Times.
Hmm.
So I don't know if I don't really read the
What's
press
Facebook's
anymore.
issue against
Um,
Clearview? You think? Oh, because
well,
it's
they
their
argue
data. They think of it as their data. All of the images, I guess.
correct. They all want most of these privacy laws are really about enshrining and protecting monopoly rights of these large companies. And so Facebook and Google funded a lawsuit against LinkedIn, which was, a rather interesting case. It was called HiQ v. LinkedIn, and it was essentially arguing that publicly available data could be scraped. And they basically did this to put the hurt on LinkedIn, which they wanted to purchase at a discount. And then, of course, Clearview used HiQ LinkedIn to actually, excuse me, to actually go and scrape, Instagram and Facebook's products. So, look, the issue is the obvious use of this case. The use case of this is for law enforcement, and Facebook is not seen as a good actor in the law enforcement community, doing things like encrypting, private
Ah,
messages, doing things
the
like doing Libra,
got it, got
right?
it.
And
So the
so,
the the
and
inherent
so,
tension between end-to-end encryption versus what the intelligence communities would prefer. Yeah.
yes, I mean, basically, the way to think about this is basically, you have to earn the trust of the consumer, right? And Facebook, elicit trust in your mind, these days as a product. And I was after the Cambridge Analytica scandal, a number of other sort of scandals that it's had in the more recent past, time with actual cops, right? Like, I mean, I grew up in an intelligence community and an intelligence family. In fact, my cousin was just stationed in Nicaragua just the other day, and so like this is like a world that I know quite well. It's hard to imagine Mark Zuckerberg, rolling up his sleeves and hanging out with his fellow humans at, say, the NYPD. That's just not a thing that one could imagine. So then the question becomes, okay, it's a consumer product, but who wants to be the person who's wearing this, consumer product
But you know what
everywhere?
though?
Um,
But check this out, because this is a mass consumer, potentially mass consumer adoption product, which will now allow individuals. This gets really interesting. I had not considered this. Currently, today, a lot of what the police are using in figuring out, in their use of facial recognition, police, they are dependent on surveillance cameras inside of convenience stores or smartphone photos or videos from citizens. And now citizens will have a new tool, these glasses, to take videos and photos in a much more discreet way where they normally would have been afraid to pull out their phone and take a photo of or video of the quote unquote bad guy. Now they have a very simplified way to do that discreetly without putting themselves in risk of harm. And so now there might be a lot more photos and videos of bad guys committing bad things, which the police can then use using Clearview inside the police department. You see what I'm saying?
Remember
yes,
Exactly.
I
the
mean,
Tyler,
remember
because
when
just
it's in,
quickly on that, what I was gonna add is that I think the fact that this was designed with privacy in mind, people when you record them know because there is a it does
Yeah.
indicate that you taking pictures or recording. So I guess it will not be that discreet, at least not this first version.
You know,
remember the LA County
I think at
Sheriff's
the end of
is
the day,
trying to possess your social media accounts whenever there's a crime, right?
Say that again, Chris.
yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
I think basically,
I think at the
what
end of
Chris
the,
was saying is that LA, it's actually the LAPD, not the LA sheriffs, Chris, that are trying to get your social
Oh,
media.
right. That was the headline yesterday. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I would just say, I think, so I, for one, like believe that every person who's a responsible adult should be able to have. I mean, I trust, most of you with that technology, and I think you have a right to know who's at your door. And so, in many cases, like with Amazon, with Ring, there's these situations where there are crimes committed, and Ring sort of goes and sends the material to local, and then they, of course, use a product like Clearview.
I think like Tyler, you've mentioned over the last few days several companies, several entities that keep doing the same thing, which is like on one hand they're like, oh, we're encryption and privacy, and we're all about the
That's Apple.
privacy, but not
Yeah.
really, right? Right? They keep their actions. We need to pay attention to their behaviors and their actions and
Yeah,
what
it's
they actually are
marketing
doing.
versus reality. Apple's going to have a real tricky time dancing that tightrope on their event on Tuesday, which we will watch that with keen interest, how they address the privacy issue at their.
No, I mean, look, I mean, privacy was always a marketing thing, right? I mean, what they really want is they want omniscience about all of your activities, your spending, your behavior. They want your genetics, they want your health data. I mean, all of that material. And the argument that will be done in the West for why they should have it is, we are in a state of conflict with the Chinese, and the Chinese are already collecting this. And so he who has the largest data source will ultimately win. And so companies will compete with each other to be in the good favor of the U.S. government. And you can already see that with Amazon and Apple. But Facebook and Google, they're sort of missing the boat on these things. They're sort of slow to the party. And so my supposition and my sort of view is that, it's great that Facebook, was trying to build this kind of product. I don't think it will work, simply because I don't think this is kind of like good long term for the brand of Ray-Bans. And I say this is, you can see my
But
photo I'm
wouldn't
wearing a pair of
police are going to love this though? So, by the way, so let's see if these dots connect or not. These puzzle pieces, because if the police have an interest in people's social media accounts, and of course that's assumed, it's that they want to, and probably correctly so, monitor your social media accounts to see if you're a bad behavior or not or whatever. And they're building some kind of database, obviously, of social media accounts. Okay. And by the way, the LAPD is not in any way unique about that. As I said, when you enter Thailand now through immigration, they also ask you for your social media accounts. So, my point is this. Could there not be in some weird future citizens who use glasses like these Ray-Ban glasses, and they intentionally want to send photos to the police, and
The Citizen app, maybe.
Absolutely,
and
dude.
I
and
want to
Absolutely.
so
make
that
sure people
citizens are now have a tool that is
$25 an
to
hour.
help them become a much more effective community. What community watch? Remember all of those posters in America of, like,
Neighborhood
Neighborhood
you
Watch.
see
Watch,
something.
Neighborhood Watch. We now have the official Neighborhood Watch sunglasses that effectively are going to enable citizens to build some. There's a startup here somewhere. Somebody could build a startup and go to police departments and say, "Hey, we leverage all of the smart sunglasses of your community, and we've built this interesting API to feed it into your systems, which then feed directly into facial recognition systems." And oh boy,
Hey repo guy, you
we
want to know
we
what
can
this
have
plane
awards for
is?
essentially who enables the largest dictatorship thing, the largest amount of surveillance, the most hardcore totalitarianism thing that cannot be reversed. That generations from now for say we basically went farther than anyone else, and
well,
no
let me
one
put it
went
this
just
way.
to basically
Two
get.
of the biggest articles on Reddit yesterday were about updates about this lady who coughed on somebody else in a.
That was shocking how fast
That
that
was
was. Did you
fast.
see
Yeah.
that?
So what's happening in Redditville these days? There was two of them.
Insurance,
There was
anybody?
the coughing lady, and then there was another one. This jackass who was on a beach telling these ladies in their bathing suits, how
They looked at
yeah.
glasses.
So this was amazing. So these were two cases
24
in
hours.
both
24 hours. They got
both in
fired.
24 hours. Two people got fired in 24 hours. Watch this and watch how this plays in. Reddit is becoming quite an interesting thing indeed. There was two separate, very interesting cases. Let's start with the first one. A lady was in some business and was directly coughing on somebody else, and the Reddit army went to work, found her, contacted the employers. She's been fired 24 hours later. Okay, case number two. Some complete jackass is on a beach, and there was ladies laying on a beach in bathing suits, like everybody does, and he was giving them the riot act about how indecent they are and don't they have any morals and think about the children and blah blah blah. He was found by the Reddit army. His boss was contacted. He's been fired, both in 24 hours. Now, imagine what can we imagine of a Reddit based on these sunglasses? The ease and repetitious the way that this would be facilitated by when everyone has popularized sunglasses to enable this is going to become every 10 minutes there's going to be a jackass doing something stupid that's going to get caught and be fired within 24 hours.
It's gonna allow people to self-police
Right.
society to an acceptable level
Okay.
of public behavior,
Okay.
which is
Let's flash forward.
fantastic.
Let's flash forward a little bit with things. So we're currently looking at this as a price point thing of, oh look, I can get like a full pair of Oculus headsets with things with other stuff with like $300 and get this one for $300. Okay, now you look at the actual bill of material cost on this. We're talking about 20 cents to about $2 worth of electronics right here. So when you start having that, it's more about whether or not it's socially acceptable to have and whether or not you have an application. We're talking that cheap. Why do you put on the glasses? Why not incorporate the clothing onto the buttons on the shirt? Why not essentially on the pants? Why not on everything? Because the thing is, they're so cheap to do. The only reason why the face is this particularly valuable is because it expresses intent. The thing is that if you already have that intent, you can put it everywhere. It's just the fact that the fashion industry and tech people don't basically talk to each other as often as they need to, and so you've got the gaps here. But when you talk across these price points, you start going to head. There's a curve essentially. I don't remember what the name of it is, but essentially, if you make something an order of magnitude cheaper, you're going to see essentially orders of magnitude more coverage of the number of devices that exist in the world. We're looking at a near-term future of ubiquitous sensors everywhere, and we've kind of already crossed that threshold on a price production standpoint. The thing that's holding us up is the social acceptability part, and that's the part that we're really.
So you have two, but you have two outlets now in the court of public opinion. You either send these jackass photos, or Karens, and I'm just the society seems to have coined the nomenclature is Karen, or whatever the male version of Karen behavior is. Will we send, if in some cases we'll want to send that to the authorities, meaning the police, or to the court of public opinion, which is Reddit, or will there evolve a new platform specifically to address these issues? To
mob justice.
Yes, the
Remember, the most downloaded app in China is
yesterday was what the state created an app specifically for
the police. Yes,
for police reporting. Yeah. No. It was for robocall blocking. That was the hot new app yesterday in China. The state.
Okay, anyway, I think if this thing can actually, create this peer pressure for people in US or everywhere else to behave, well, that may be
might be. So yeah, it might stop.
Yeah,
I wonder what happens to all of those crazy Karen-like behaviors when everyone's walking around wearing Ray-Bans.
Tyler, there's a gentleman in the audience. His name's Future Meme with Things. His name's Nick. He is one of the most knowledgeable people that I know about augmented reality stuff. He's been working on this much longer than most people have. I'd probably recommend him on the stage if you can get up there.
Johan just came up, and then I wanted to see if Susie from Denmark, who's really
Susie's an amazing human.
Susie's fantastic, and she's a whiz on all things about the aging, what they call the silver economy, which is is there some potential interesting use cases around the glass framework, and no pun intended, about how senior citizens might use it. But Johan, did you have any thoughts about what might be the new era of smart glasses?
Yeah, that might actually be an implication I didn't think of. The thing is here that you can actually remind them about things that you need to do, medications, visits to the doctor, etc. It's as well as actually you could, if you don't drop them, you could use them to make an emergency call if you fall over. Thing is that does this one have accelerometers, for example? That you can actually make a fall detector. That would be quite an interesting thing.
They haven't announced that officially, but they have announced that they have stabilization features for the video, so they probably do have an IMU.
And the next thing is that will they implement Find My Glasses? I will buy them any minute they release it.
Okay.
They'll probably just beep when they get out of range of your phone, right?
I wonder how they might also help people who have challenges with social interactions, so people on the autistic spectrum, might there be cues that could be added to help them to better interpret social situations?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I'll tell you,
it doesn't understand the context in real time, so it couldn't give you contextual cues like that.
But that's a really wild use case I had never considered. With that, you eventually, when the hardware gets small enough, you could have AIs coaching you on more appropriate responses to conversations.
You can have that right now.
There's actually a study from Microsoft using HoloLens AR glasses for blind or badly sighted people, and it was used to give them social cues. So the AR glasses watched the social environment for them, and like turn to this way or turn to this way, and here on your left hand you have this person. So it used actual facial recognition from a limited database. So
we built that. The challenge study that was happening at now that specific product, we were in the navigation space with HoloLens. One of the challenges for that specific product is the amount that they could do on device was somewhat limited. So a lot of them were basically using cloud. And the problem with the cloud access is it took about it took like three to 10 seconds. It was almost random for round trip time for basically being able to access those functionality. They're using essentially a lot of Microsoft cloud frameworks at the time. What's very exciting is that now with the newest generation of headsets and wearables is they have on-device AI capabilities. So you don't have to essentially do the round trip to the cloud. So it's a big difference if you have that available, sub 300 milliseconds as opposed to like 10-second response time. It completely changes social interactions when you have that.
But
I
that
mean,
isn't necessarily the case. The cloud doesn't have to be that slow. There are
exactly.
IoT
Yeah,
devices
you
that
do.
are literally 200 milliseconds to 100 to 200 milliseconds.
It
So
has
that's just
been my
bad
experience
implementation.
that the Cortana and the services that are basically made available for these things, and I've been like in the tech demos where
No,
they're
so
showing
have
off
I.
the
So have I. And the ones that are really more than a second are just badly designed. Less than
I'm
500
not arguing about bad
millisecond.
design. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that it's not that it can't work. It's that essentially in real world practice scenarios for where you actually have your deployments, it essentially ends up being a side case. Essentially, doesn't get prioritized. I do want to get a
Hans,
chance to Nick for to be able to say something because he spent a lot of time in the space with digital ecosystems and AR, and he's got a lot of knowledge on this stuff.
Hans, you want to comment something?
Go ahead, Mindy.
Hans, yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think will be way more powerful if it is built into the hearing aids that people in this age group is wearing anyway and all day long. I mean, the sunglasses that will be, yeah, once in a while that they are in place, and and as mentioned, maybe you cannot find them if you are a little confused. So they will soon disappear, but the hearing aids will be there all the time. And but the combination of the glasses and the hearing aids. So if we can speak to people directly and give them guidance in this way without letting everybody around know, that would be pretty damn powerful, I think. But the hearing aid, I think, really, really, really needs a a brush up, so to speak.
I have
And
I have some
the
design
most of the hearing
hearing
aid
aids.
business is in Denmark. I mean, we develop, I think, 30 or 40% of the world's hearing aids, and I really think this whole branch is really not hearing the world so glad. I'm kind of disappointed about the hearing aid business. So.
Yeah. Is there any info on how you activate this eyeglasses? Do you have to like have a Facebook account or something?
Why would they
I would
not have
guess.
to?
I would guess so.
So, hey guys, so
It's
first
probably
time
Bluetooth.
caller, big time fan. I just wanted to jump in. Thanks for the invite, Chris. Yeah, all the stuff you're saying is totally true. For the next set of glasses, like I don't think these glasses really have those types of sensors. My theory, looking at it, is that they're going to be launching these spatial computing glasses, and these video will act as really good training data sets for them to be able to start to
Yeah.
train their spatial AIs. Like they need a huge amount of video for that, and it kind of needs to be at that perspective. You can kind of see evidence of that in how Tesla trains, their cars. They need all that driving data. So that was my insight into why these glasses are important to them. So there you go.
Okay.
I
These glasses. I think. I mean, in my opinion, the future is going to be everybody's going to be wearing glasses. Going to have these earbuds on, and to Tyler's point, this come up quite a bit. I think it's a responsibility of these companies to really do privacy, like because it's not the companies that would necessarily could be problematic, but it's more of a dictatorial regime that could come in sometime and have the ability to see what everybody else is seeing and hear what everybody else is saying, and that's a scary place.
Okay. So the next.
I
Yep.
would just
Tyler, just the
Okay.
last one that actually probably need our friends at Twilight Zone or the thing is that imagine that the glasses are connected and you actually when you had the idea about this with helping you in social interactions. The thing is here that we have quite a few games where you actually have that you need to give a sentence to get to the next part of the quest, for example. Thank that since the glasses see what you do, can look up the profile of the one you're speaking to, and actually hear what it says, can interpret it, and give you a suggestion for a good pickup line. So now, finally, we useless ones at picking up girls at bars finally get to drink.
So now China's going to reverse their stance on the games and insist that you wear the glasses to increase the birth rate. So Sweden could benefit from this as well.
Japan has official programs for this, apparently.
Yeah.
Like, there's government dating Tinder apps, apparently. I don't know very much about them, but I've heard that they're trying all sorts of things.
Yep.
So do North Korea.
The next one is from Bloomberg, from Mark Gurman, who's the resident geek there at Bloomberg. He says he has sources that Apple has appointed longtime Apple Watch and Health software chief Kevin Lynch as the new head of the Apple Car project after Doug Field's departure, where Doug just went over to Ford. We read that headline at 20.
How many can they cycle
24 or 48 hours ago. Well, Kevin's a very diehard Apple, and I imagine he'll spend the rest of his career there. And we will see Kevin Lynch on Tuesday in the live stream that we're going to watch together here in Clubhouse. Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, perfectly at the end of our regularly scheduled Tech News Around the World, which goes from about 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific. And then we'll start the live stream where they will do the iPhone 13 and the new iWatch 7. And Kevin Lynch is the head of Apple Watch, so he'll get a lot of FaceTime in that live stream, no doubt. But it's now, according to Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, he's also taking over the Apple Car project because he's done a fantastic job with the watch. So that's just a quick little note there. The next one is from The Verge that Epic, who's in a massive lawsuit with Apple,
Thank God for e-discovery.
Epic asks Apple to reinstate Fortnite developer account in South Korea. So this is really interesting. Not as a response to this lawsuit, Apple not only shut down Epic in the App Store, they even removed their developer account. So if you're a developer in the Apple ecosystem, you have to have an account, right? And you have a developer account, and you have to pay, I think it's $99 a year for your developer account. And that gives you access to all of the demo operating systems, which all of the developers are now using. iOS 15 beta 8 is the latest. And no doubt they'll announce the formal iOS 15 at the event on Tuesday. And so everyone can download it on iOS 15, and they'll talk about it during the live event, of course, and remind everybody how great it is, and how everybody's in one of the benefits of the Apple ecosystem is everybody uses the most up-to-date version of the operating system, and that's one of the weaknesses of the Android ecosystem is there's so many different phones, and everyone's got different versions of Android, and aren't you lucky you're an Apple developer because everyone's got the latest version of the operating system. So Epic,
we all have the same level of privacy, all of us all together.
Epic is now asking for their developer account to be turned back on, to be reinstated after passage of a Korean bill forcing app stores to allow alternative payment systems. So Epic saying, hey, Apple, you just got the shit beat out of you in the Korean legislature. You now have no choice. You now have to let app developers give them the option to charge their users directly. So would you please reinstate our account in Korea so we can start charging our Fortnite users directly? And
can they open up a lawsuit in South Korea too and do discovery over there? We might get.
But let's see how long it takes Apple to consider and debate whether they reinstate Epic's account in Korea, because Korea's already made the decision. Epic won, game over in Korea. So Epic's now correctly suggesting that their account be reinstated in Korea because the case has already been settled there. So let's see how Apple responds. It'll be very interesting to see. And I imagine the CEO of Epic, Tim Sweeney, must have tweeted about this, but apparently he has not yet. It'll be interesting to see what people say about this. Fortnite's Twitter account, which is Fortnite Game, says Epic has asked Apple to restore our Fortnite developer account. Epic intends to re-release Fortnite on iOS in Korea, offering both Epic Payment and Apple Payment side by side in compliance with the new Korea law. And Mark from Bloomberg has chimed in on this one, saying, curious what Apple does here. Would imagine they wait till the ruling before touching Epic's developer account. And he's probably right. Or until they actually face penalties for not reinstating Epic's account, because Apple's no fan of Epic's at this point. And because it's in part Epic's, it's due to, Epic can take the fault or the blame or the glory and the praise for the fact that Korea's done this. It's likely that Korea would not have done this if not for Epic Games, actually. So we will see what happens.
A short question there. Since they now have a 30% up, will they lower the price on their platform for the same content that you can buy either by Apple for $5,
Right.
or you can buy them directly from for $2.50 or whatever.
And that's the Spotify's point. Spotify's point is, this 30% that you're charging us, we have to charge the users more. We would love to charge them $9.99 a month, $10 a month, but we have to charge them $12.99, an extra 30% more, and we're charging that 30% more because Apple's charging us the 30%. If we charge them directly, we would charge them $9.99, which would be the same price that Apple's charging for Apple Music. And this is Spotify's point. Is it's an unfair fight because you're forcing us to charge our users more than you're able to charge your users because you don't tax yourself 30%. So it's an interesting point that Johan raises there. So the next, by the way, before we go,
is there a lawsuit regarding that between
Spotify never brought a direct lawsuit, although they're playing.
Oh, but they bought the war zone with they're like, hey, antitrust regulators, let's wave the flag. You need some senator briefings? We got your senator briefings. You need some lobbyist talking points? We got your lobbyist talking points. To have our lawyers look at.
Let me put it this way: Swedes don't like to be confrontational, so they would prefer that the EU fight this battle, because it's an EU issue ultimately. Spotify can't do anything directly. Americans are very litigious, so Epic it did file the lawsuit directly. Spotify's obviously playing a role in that, and Spotify's playing a role in getting the EU to regulate and all that. But they're, Swedes have a different way of trying to achieve their objectives. So then
the last thing about regarding that
argument, though, that's a fantastic argument that they would charge not not able to compete with that 30%. That's a pretty darn good one,
Johan?
Yeah, and the last thing here as well. The thing is that Spotify might have refused or skipped taking a lawsuit because since they saw Apple throw Fortnite totally off the platform. Imagine what would happen if Apple throw out Spotify from the iOS platform. Oh no!
So there's this guy. It's somebody named. We've got a newbie on stage named Cal Patel, maybe.
Yeah. Thanks. Welcome to Tech News.
Welcome.
First time here, Cal.
Losing all my hair. Yeah, here's what's happening though, Tyler. This is the problem. See, I almost lost.
I know.
All my
we
hair.
Told you this would happen.
I'm basically,
You have no idea what's going on, and your mama doesn't love you anymore, Cal. I hate to break it to you.
No, and I don't know what the F is going on in the world anymore. I keep reading these headlines. I keep coming in on Twitter headlines. I have no idea what's behind them. Right?
Well, you're in a good place.
What's this BNLP? What's that? Well, like
buy now. It's called buy now, pay later, Cal.
Yeah. I thought it was a European bank for all this time. It's like, well, no, that's BNP, isn't that BNP? Yeah. No, so I'm here.
Well, we just did a very long deep dive on the Facebook glasses, and boy, all kinds of interesting thoughts that we could only have done together as a group here.
Oh, you know what? Like this takes me back. Like, God, no, it's not a relevant story, but it's so old. Like I remember back at Best Buy, I was sitting there at my desk, and this at the time my assistant says, hey, I've got the CEO of Oakley on the phone, and I'm like, what the heck? Why does he want to talk to me? So the guy comes on, and he's like saying, I've been trying to sell Oakleys to Best Buy, right? And the merchant doesn't listen to me. Cal, I've heard that you bring new shit into the company, so I wanted to just talk to you because we've got these wonderful Oakley things which have MP3 players on it, right? And I said, that's not going to sell at Best Buy because we're going to put it next to washing machines. We have no idea how to sell this stuff, right? So these
Wow.
guys have been glasses. People trying to put stuff on glasses has been like the big game, right? And now it's the next level here.
Well,
So yeah,
speaking of
no,
which,
Actually, somebody yesterday when we were talking brought up Oakley, and they were wondering what Oakley would do after
yep.
this.
But they're owned by,
The same company.
yeah, that's what
I think
everything's
they'll make
shaped
them
up to
more. You know
now.
what they're likely to do? If there's, I think they're smart, given the same parent company of Luxottica, is they'll make them more sporty, friendly, higher frame per rate. For doing your jet skiing and skiing, and the genres where people use Oakley's.
Bigger battery
But they were
packs,
doing
more
this like they
sport.
were doing this like 12 years ago with things. They had like the Oakleys that had like the real time like speedometer as you're flying down the hill with things of the ski
Well,
slope thing or whatever. They couldn't make them sell beyond a few
by the
hundred
way,
yards with things. I mean, they've been
I
experimenting
got
with this
some
for a
breaking
while.
news, guys. You're really not going to believe this one. This is Nobody saw this coming. It turns out Clubhouse itself has its own glasses. I just tweeted it to the Tech News Twitter account, and you have to see these. Talk about disruption. This is wildly innovative. I just tweeted this out to the Tech News Twitter account, and it looks like Ewan McGregor is the first to get the new Clubhouse glasses. You can see yourself, but you got to go to the Twitter account to see what these look like. Announcing Clubhouse glasses. This is from the verified Clubhouse Twitter account. I just tweeted from Tech News Around the World, TNATW. This incredible tech allows you to experience immersive audio without the distractions of physical appearance. It's essentially a blindfold. It looks like a black piece of cloth you wear over your eyes so that you can focus on the audio. And the question is, how much does it cost? What kind of sensors might be in there? Are there privacy issues that we might need to concern ourselves with?
And very inclusive.
Super.
Close
Well,
your eyes.
Does he use the Force while he's using it?
it allows you to use the Force. Yeah.
Where can I get them,
Yes.
Tyler?
Where can you buy these? From your sock drawer, apparently. So the next, very well played by Clubhouse. I kind of love that one. So the next one is,
Tyler.
yes.
Sorry.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi everyone. I just raised my hand. I know that we left the Spotify story, and I agree with you. I just wanted to add and was laughing at the non-confrontational part of us Swedes. It's very
Yes.
correct. But I just wanted to emphasize that Spotify certainly does
Oh,
have
yeah.
a lawsuit, and but doing it the Spotify the
Yeah.
Swedish way alongside with
Yes.
Epic Games. And I wanted to highlight that since a long time back, they are in fact only paying 15%, but of course that only applies to
Yeah.
Spotify. Just wanted to highlight.
Thank you,
those
Sarah,
things.
for the clarifications. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. So the next one up is Microsoft indefinitely postpones the return into its office in the U.S., saying it has decided against attempting to forecast a new date for full reopening. The pandemic keeps pushing back Microsoft's plans to make plans about planning to reopen. Because who knows how this whole thing's going to go. So it's now indefinite postponement. So if you're a Microsoft employee, go ahead and move to Southeast Asia, get yourself a nice place by the beach, and enjoy a nice coconut water. So the next one's from TechCrunch, that Epic, the same company we were just talking about, to shut down an app called House Party, the video chat app it acquired in 2019. In October, and they'll shut it down in October, along with Fortnite mode, which uses House Party for video chats. House Party, the social video chat app acquired by Fortnite maker Epic Games for a reported $35 million back in 2019, is shutting down. $35 million is nothing to acquire an app like that, and that means it might have been what we call an acqui-hire. They paid to acquire the team behind it. Because if they had more than 10 people on the team, which they likely did, the going rate in acqui-hires is about $3 million per developer. So if they acquired the talent, and paid $35 million, that's kind of a wash. The next is from The Verge. It's an update on our friend Ashley over at Apple, who's kicking up all kinds of dust over in Apple land. Apple has fired senior engineering program manager Ashley Jovic for allegedly leaking confidential information. Jovic has been tweeting about workplace issues, and we said, how long will it be before our friend Ashley gets fired? And now we know the answer.
That was like 3 days ago, 4 days ago. It's impressive how fast these things move, right?
And we had to imagine they were itching to find a way to get Ashley out of the building because
It was probably her workplace performance reviews, which were put in place just last week, right?
she was
They have one criteria: don't tweet
she
anymore.
was really pushing the boundaries, and Apple has fired senior engineering program manager Ashley Govik for allegedly violating the company's rules against leaking confidential information. For months, Govik has been tweeting openly about allegations of harassment, surveillance, and workplace safety. Here's a quote: "When I began
secret stuff.
When I began raising workplace safety concerns in March and nearly immediately faced retaliation and intimidation, I started preparing myself for something exactly like this to happen," she says. "I'm disappointed that the company I have loved since I was a little girl would treat their employees this way." Govik has raised concerns that her office is in an Apple building located on a Superfund site, meaning it requires special oversight due to the historical waste contamination. She also says that she faced harassment and bullying from her manager and members of her team. More recently, she's begun raising privacy concerns related to Apple's policies on how it can search and surveil employees' work phones. So she tweeted out recently, "So, Apple has pics of my boobs. During a discovery thing 3 years ago, legal forced me to hand over all my text. They refused to let me delete anything, even fully personal, even when I said by fully personal, I mean nudes. They said they're in their permanent evidence locker." And what this is about is, as we came to learn from not only Ashley, but Ashley found other coworkers who were disgruntled on interesting related issues. For example, that when you join Apple, one gentleman said he was faced the conundrum where they said they would like you to connect your personal Apple account to your work account. So whatever your Apple ID email address is, that you continue to use that as your employee account. And the problem is that is connected to, they issue you obviously a new laptop and a new phone or whatever. And when you log into your Apple ID with your pedestrian, your ordinary email account, that now this Apple laptop and Apple phone that you use for work will have your photos, your personal photos synced to it. To which Geeks pointed out, well, only if you turn on to sync your photos to
Yeah, and like I dove a little bit further, Tyler, and it's like it's so easy to fix. You just separate your logon accounts. You have a personal logon and a work logon. You have your work iCloud on the work logon and your personal iCloud on the personal iCloud,
You
logon.
have a single time that you click the wrong button, the wrong Boolean toggle, the wrong time you enter in the wrong login at somewhere, and the entire thing goes to hell. And I've seen this multiple accounts and multiple things. A lot of people talk about privacy stuff being this fantasy thing of like, well, if you just basically practice the secure thing. If you logically create dark patterns everywhere where a single click can basically ruin essentially months or years worth of trying to keep things separate, you're working on an unstable structure, and they kind of have a version of that here.
So, a member of Apple's employee relations team reached out to Govik earlier today saying that the company was looking into sensitive intellectual property matter and wanted to speak to her within the hour. Govik said she wanted to keep all communications in writing so that she could tweet them. Basically, she's intentionally tweeting everything that's going on. She's trying to be hyper transparent, which Ashley, if you talk to a lawyer, your lawyer is going to remind you that you signed an NDA about your internal communications with Apple. And this is just not...
Unless they're labor board queuing up for other fun things. That's a different kind of
So Govik said she wanted to keep all communications in writing, so she's not going to call back, and noted she was forwarding the correspondence along to the labor board, the NLRB, as Chris just said, where she recently filed a charge. The employee relations representative responded to say that because she had chosen not to participate in the discussion, they would move forward with the information they had, and given the seriousness of these allegations, suspended her access to Apple's systems. Which makes sense because she's leaking internal stuff. Hours later, Govik received an email that her employment at Apple was being terminated effective tomorrow. And in response to a request for comment from The Verge, Apple spokesperson Josh Rosenstock said, We are and have always been deeply committed to creating and maintaining a positive and inclusive workplace. We take all concerns seriously, and we thoroughly investigate whenever a concern is raised, and out of respect for the privacy and any individuals involved, we do not discuss specific employee matters.
See, he talked to the lawyer.
Correct. Apple is very very aware of laws, more than most companies, and so.
And if you say the wrong word here, it can be very expensive.
they're very mindful of legal matters over there at Apple, so they don't make comments they don't need to make. So, Ash, hi, happy to help. Please send. And Ashley has tweeted out. So Ashley tweeted out, any bets if I get a literal knock on my physical door from Apple today, because she's refusing to have the phone call with them, so she's expecting they'll actually come to her house to have the conversation. Anyway,
What do you think her end game is?
yeah, we talked about.
Does she
correct.
even have
She's going to run for
Well,
office.
I thought her end game was to try and find a scenario. She was trying to find scenarios that would get Apple in very embarrassing position. For example, she created a website saying, "Hey, Apple current and former employees, please tell me your Apple horror stories." She made that website. She claims she collected about 500 of them. And by doing so, you're basically surveying the ability to create common threads of horror stories that could create a pattern of negative or potentially illegal, or at a minimum, very embarrassing behaviors. And then you have a weapon to use in negotiation of your severance package, to put it politely. So,
along with the pay stuff with things, there's the pay one, there's the other part.
Yeah, if you can point out, hey, Apple, we have now found out. Well, she was you're right, Chris. Thank you. So there was that. She was doing two things simultaneously.
She was doing more than two. Those are just the ones that were more prominent.
Two very clever ones. The two clever ones was, please tell me your horror stories as former Apple employees about discrimination, about anything. Separately, please tell us how much you're making and your sex and your race. Which is, Apple said you're not allowed to do that. It's against their policies. And this is what really initiated a bunch of the attention in the press. So both of those could become easily weaponized in a very keen way that tech journalists would love to jump all over, which is Apple has now been found to be paying white male workers more. So Ashley was intentionally trying to collect the data to enable that headline. And if she did get enough data of enough employees revealing, their race and their gender and their salaries, she would obviously go to Apple and say, "Hey, Apple, look what I have. How much will you pay me to not release this?" Or if she's just going scorched earth, she just doesn't care to even negotiate that and just wants to go to the press with that. But if she gave Apple any indication that she did have that smoking gun, that might be worth, some kind of interesting severance package to get her to sign an additional non-disclosure agreement.
This was about feedback, right?
Well, she initially did it internally. She made an internal survey using
No, meaning she got feedback in an interview that was like when you read it, it was like, that's actually pretty decent feedback from a boss to a subordinate.
It started out, she tweeted out photos of a...
So I think we owe this to...
Okay, you're right. Cal doesn't know. All right, so she tweeted out photos of an internal iMessage chat she had with a superior, which seemed like her boss, where she had given a presentation, and it was involved in... He made comments that much better job today on your presentation. You didn't have this rising inflection at the end of every sentence, which by the...
I got it. Yeah, I just I kind of fast looked into some of that stuff. This is very... So yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Yeah, I didn't want to distract the thing with the question about the end game, but here's the thing. I mean, like, there's if you really want to help equality in business, then maybe she asks Apple to create a foundation or donate or to do something
Sure.
Oh, we
big
are so far past
to
that.
work this issue, or she's just looking for a deal, right? Or she's being used as a pawn by the workers' unions, which is where Chris was kind of, I think, alluding to, right?
Yeah, I
Because
was
that's
kind of
what they're
going that
looking for,
direction
people
with
like
things
this.
because there's some nascent labor movements. This is where like the Sanders crowds and stuff, where it's like, well, they've tried to unionize a bunch of things. They lost almost everything except for the transportation sector with like Teamsters and like the the dying remnants of the harbors and stuff like that occasionally shut down things for Christmas runs. But I mean, it's not what it used to be. A lot of people don't realize that in the 1930s that we had that like communist movements, socialism movements with things essentially that shut down essentially major economies literally as like a weekly basis type kind of thing. It's just shocking how much power they wielded back in the day. But they're kind of like dead now. So what's interesting is that when you hear like rumblings of like workers are unhappy, gig workers is a thing, like antitrust is a thing. Some hear the calls of old with things and go, wait, maybe this is our time to have rebirth essentially right in the middle of tech with things. So anyone that can basically come with something juicy to the table, it means you get some old guard people and they still have some political connections buried somewhere with things, and you can actually get some actual political movements out of that. I don't actually know if that's actually where this is actually going, but if you start singing a certain tune, you start getting calls from interesting people that encourage you to do all sorts of insane things. So it's kind of interesting watching what happens when people get radicalized around this stuff.
So she did have as her Twitter bio until recently, still not fired by Apple, and now
I was gonna
she's
ask about
updated her
that.
Twitter bio to say "good trouble." She sent out a tweet recently about her firing, and this recent tweet I wanted to point out. Where did it go? She says, "When I began raising workplace safety issues, this is just in the past few hours. The Verge wrote the article, Apple fires senior engineer program manager Apple Jovic for
Let the
right, and then
let the headlines
she
go.
says, when I began raising workplace safety concerns in March and immediately faced retaliation and intimidation, I started preparing myself for something exactly like this to happen. I'm disappointed that the company I love." So she's quoting herself from the article as her tweet.
Okay, real quick, workplace safety things. This is completely off topic, but actually connects to the earlier topic. Apple, essentially, if you want to look for some fun things, I brought some in the Prior Tech Newsroom, but we're talking about glasses and everything. It's with like Facebook. There were basically employees coming with eye injuries at the local hospitals for like laser prototypes that essentially were partially blind. Some of essentially the early QA testers with things from the Apple stuff, and they're like, no, don't tell them you work for Apple as a thing. So I expect to see some very strange things when they start doing the self-driving car versions of this stuff, where it's like, oh, show up at the local hospitals. Let's look at the latest leaks there. I'm wondering, she's saying workplace safety is probably not that division, but I'm kind of wondering, it's like, oh no, what kind of safety things can you run into when you're clicking on screens?
So, who's Brian Fagoli? A tech journalist says, "This was long overdue. I wish Jovic all the best, but this was not a sustainable relationship, and I can't imagine she's surprised." No, she's not surprised. She said this was coming, so she started preparing for it. So, anyway, the next big story is from the Washington Post. Texas governor signs bill banning social media companies with 50 million or more monthly active users. That's all of them. Daily active users would be 50 million monthly active users. That's all of them. In fact, they all have 50 million daily active users.
I think it's like what, TikTok's probably one of the few that can go to the other one, right?
So anyway, from blocking or restricting people on their content based on their viewpoint. So this is identical to what just happened in Brazil. Texas governor signs bill banning social media companies from blocking or restricting people or their content based on their viewpoint. The law is an escalation of a conservative critique of Silicon Valley and will likely to face legal challenges from the industry. And this will turn into an American political debate, as nearly everything does these days. But this is a Republican issue, essentially, as this says. And he's a Texas governor. Greg Abbott's a Republican in a largely Republican state of Texas. This is not a surprise to see this come out of Texas. There was something similar that the Republican governor of Florida tried to do recently as well, which this article mentions. And the point is, they feel like their views are being silenced, which is a tad ironic because the data shows that the wildly most viral content on Facebook, for example, is far right-leaning content. But
Not quite.
What do you mean
Not
not
quite.
quite?
That's the Daily. No, the Daily Wire, which is the most viral thing on the platform, is Mark Zuckerberg and Ben Shapiro have a very close personal relationship, and there's a lot of people at Facebook and at Daily Wire who believe that that's been rigged to sort of have Mark be the House conservative at Facebook, or have Ben be the House conservative at
Yeah,
Facebook.
my point is that on
So
CrowdTangle, where they release the top 10 most engaged content each day, Ben Shapiro and Dan Bongino dominate the top 10 list of most engaged pieces of content on Facebook on a daily basis.
right, and so what I'm saying to you is that Ben Shapiro, right, has a relationship already with Mark Zuckerberg, which I think both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal have reported that. I know both, I know Ben, and it's fixed in that way. And Bongino has a relationship through some of the investors in his properties, also with Facebook. So there's a lot of people in the conservative ecosystem, and a lot of people who testified before Congress and Senate and House and all that, who say that there's a sort of like rigged relationship that exists. So when people say like, oh, there's this thing going on, no, it's in fact they have house voices that they placate by artificially boosting Shapiro's and Bongino's content. It's not a reflection of how popular they are.
So
In other words, it's a
it's a,
reflection.
I got
It's a
you.
reflection of a rigged
I'm gonna read. I'm
deal.
gonna read a bit of the article. The inherent sort of irony that Democrats will point out, of course, is that Republicans are quick to say, "Hey, a cake shop, it's their right. If they don't, private businesses can do what private businesses want to do. That's their goddamn American right. That's what my grandpappy died for on the Battle of Bunker Hill. So private company can do what they want to do. How dare the government try and tell a private company what they have to do?" And now you have the government trying to tell private companies exactly what they can and cannot do. This is a little ironic, a little hypocritical is what the Democrats will point out in this case. And of course, people on the right are going to say, but this is different, y'all, because this is the town square. This is the new freedom of speech. And we have a right to freedom of speech. And how dare you try and stop the First Amendment? And then the left is going to counter back again and say, no, this is not freedom of speech. You're able to say whatever you want, wherever you want. This is about freedom of reach, is how they're positioning this debate, which is you don't have freedom of reach. You have freedom of speech. No one's stopping you from saying any crazy KKK racist bullshit you want to say. They're not letting you say it on giving you the reach to say it, to spread it, to know,
It's a good thing with net neutrality that essentially if your content's hosted on the back end, that's going to all get equally. When you've got the reach factor, it's all going to basically be travel through the pipes in the exact same priority, and you don't have to basically cut deals for essentially if you want to basically say, hey, video is the future. It's a good thing you don't have to cut deals with every single data center or the suppliers with that to basically have that same sort of reach as everyone else. The fact is essentially there are gatekeepers, and when you have those gatekeepers have political viewpoints and are willing to exercise them, it gets really tricky to basically guarantee delivery of all the different things along the
So
internet.
what's interesting about this is it says it now requires these platforms to create reports on any illegal or potentially policy violating content, as well as build a complaint system where people could challenge companies' decisions to remove content or flag illegal activity. This is just never going to happen, by the way. Individuals and the state attorney general could file lawsuits if they believe that the tech companies wrongfully banned them from their platforms. Here's the quote. "It is now law that conservative viewpoints in Texas cannot be banned on social media," Abbott said. "Conservatives have long claimed without evidence that the Silicon Valley social media companies are censoring them based on their political affiliations. The company denies those accusations." Abbott's signature follows a similar effort in Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis signed a law that would bar social media companies from suspending political candidates in the run-up to the election and make it easier for Florida State Attorney General and individuals to bring lawsuits when they think tech companies have acted unfairly. A federal judge in June blocked the law from taking effect, suggesting it would be found unconstitutional after tech industry groups brought a challenge. DeSantis' administration appealed the judge's ruling. Tech industry groups have criticized the Texas law, and the industry is likely to bring a similar challenge in the Lone Star State of Texas to prevent it from taking effect. The Texas law argues that social media platforms function as common carriers. As I said, it's the it's the freedom of speech issue, reflecting an increasingly common argument in conservative circles that social media companies should be forced to host all users. It was popularized by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who earlier this year suggested in an opinion that social media companies could be regulated like common carriers, such as phone companies, which face special regulations because of the importance of the service they offer. Eric Goldman, a professor of the Santa Clara University School of Law, said the Texas law does not survive critical scrutiny, and he expects that it will be struck down by the court system like the law in Florida was. He said both the Florida and Texas laws represent an effort to play for partisan crowd, not to make good policy, even if it's... Yeah.
Goldman, by the way, has received lots of money from the tech industry.
He's in, Santa Clara University is literally next door to all the big tech companies for...
Yeah, I mean, he personally is sort of their go-to lobbyist. So just so people know, people should watch what Pierre Omidyar does here, and the outfits that he funds at Matt Solar's outfit, all these anti-monopoly, properties that are working with the FTC. Both of these laws are basic. Friends of mine wrote both of them. They're basically designed to create both the court challenge and also to make Ron DeSantis presidential candidates in 2024. I suspect they'll both lose, but it just whether something is good policy or good politics is the sort of more interesting question. And I should say too, we do know of backroom deals that Zuckerberg has done, and some of those things have come out in congressional hearings. And you'll note that Republicans broke on the House Antitrust Subcommittee at Judiciary. They broke, several of them sort of split off, one of whom was Matt Gaetz. He's a good friend of mine. I helped write his book. And then, of course, the other was Ken Buck, who was initially pro-tech, the tech world. But what ended up happening is the tech industry kept hiring away as lobbyists his own staffers. And he started to realize that because they're monopolies, they're so rich, and they're essentially buying off everybody in D.C. So that now it's going to go up to the House, and there are lots of attacks coming against Facebook and Google now, and I think people, they get into the right-left debate. It's really not very helpful to actually dealing with the monopoly power argument. But however we get there, I suppose, is kind of how to think about it.
Didn't Matt Gaetz have that child problem though?
I didn't hear that. Can I just say again?
Gates.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was a New York Times article about that, but it's since come out that he was being extorted in network, and the guy who was involved in that, I think, is now facing federal charges. There was a sort of PR push against him, but very interesting stuff. Yeah, he's married to Palmer Luckey's sister, and Palmer Luckey knows all about how Facebook kind of did him dirty, in part because of his support for candidate Trump, which he wasn't supposed to do while he was working at Facebook.
So the article mentions kind of what Charles touched on briefly about it. Both the two gentlemen who made these laws, the governors of Texas and Florida, are both potential presidential candidates, and that might have something to do with why they're actually doing these laws. It's kind of pre-campaign politicking. It says there's a dangerous movement by some social media companies to silence conservative ideas and values. He said, this is wrong and we will not allow it in Texas. And then the counter argument says this will certainly be ruled unconstitutional as well but Republicans won't pay any price because they view it as good politics. It's going to keep heading into First Amendment buzzsaw. Moderation, Adam Kovavovich, the CEO of Chamber of Progress, which counts Facebook, Google, and other tech giants as its funders, says he thinks Texas law runs afoul of the First Amendment, but Republicans are moving forward with it because they see it as an opportunity for political gain. And it seems like a bit of political theater in the run-up to the next election. And so now DeSantis and the Texas governor, will have a strong talking point when they are running in their presidential campaigns.
Yeah, deeply popular, by the way. The laws are deeply popular in both states, based upon among independents and Democrats alike, because everyone seems to think they're being censored on Facebook.
That's smart politics, and that's why the related article that was from the Washington Post. The New York Times covered it as well. Texas forbids political censorship by social media companies. USA Today, Wall Street Journal, these are the biggest publications in America, are all covering it. And Greg Abbott himself took to Twitter to say, "Watch live the signing House Bill 20 into law." he's live streaming the signature of it, which that tells you everything you need to know about the kind of potential motives behind why he's doing this.
Yeah, so and he seemed totally out of it when I was talking to him about it. And the argument here for those who are uninitiated is, you do have free speech when you have competitive marketplaces. I mean, anyone can create a blog, but if there's one size, one monopoly, right? Like the phone company can't turn off my phone bill if they don't like my speech, or the water company can't turn off my water. And so there's this argument about monopoly rights here that's sort of embedded here. But Abbott increasingly is courting a lot of this sort of like anti-Facebook, anti-Google tech donors, and he was at a friend of mine who's who's a big tech investor's wedding recently. He basically like wanted to talk about how he was going to go after all the evil tech companies, and he was like campaigning as president. And so the fact that it's the discussion has mutated so much in 5 years' time is kind of crazy.
The New York Times covering Brazil's Bolsonaro also just put in a temporary banning social media companies from removing accounts and contents that violate their rules ahead of the president. Even if it violates the rules of the platform, you can't remove it because it's law here. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this shakes out. So the next one is from Gizmodo. California defense attorney named Jay Lederman, once dubbed the hacktivist advocate and known for defending whistleblowers and hackers, dies at 50 years old. And the next one is from Variety about Amazon launches the Fire TV Omni series, its first smart TVs, starting at $410, shipping in October, just in time for the holidays. Amazon's getting into the smart TV game, even though that game's already been largely sewn up by Google with their Android TV operating system and Apple TV. And it's interesting Amazon didn't make more of an effort to capture that market. It's a little late on that one. The next one's from TechCrunch. Twitter's testing a new automated account label for profiles to self-identify as bots, intended for good bots, and the label will remain opt-in for now. Very cool.
Can I point out a weird thing in Twitter's history? This was like, I don't know, like 13 years ago, maybe that long, if it's that long, where essentially there was an event where they're like the original thing, Twitter is the new darling of Silicon Valley. Maybe it was 15 years ago, it's been forever. And they were saying, this is exciting because essentially like, MIT kids are hooking up to like, so they can tweet their laundry when it's done as a thing. It's like the hacker's dream kind of thing. And it's something that they have like the whole API you can plug into and make all these amazing SMS messages and all these things. And so what they do is they say, well, we want to have developer stuff for this, so here's an API you can play with, and everyone plays with it. They say, actually, we're going to shut that thing down because we're moving to a new API. It's even better, and then it's actually worse. And then it's like, oh, this is terrible. But that's okay. We'll do it this one. We'll do it right this time. And then they get a bunch of people to build companies launching with Twitter branded essentially APIs and everything else. They build whole startups around it. And then all at once, Twitter says, you know what? Actually, we think that Twitter should be for people. We don't actually want to have automatic things on our platform, so let's revoke all API access whatsoever. And so there were companies that just went bankrupt essentially overnight with their valuations and everything with stuff, and they shut it all down. And then a few years later, they say, we'd like to work with developers on a one-on-one relationship, and a lot of them were like a little gun-shy with their stuff. They said, nah, frack that with stuff, we'll do it our own way. And then all of a sudden, within about a year or two of that, you start seeing all these scraper-type engines come out everywhere, and now we have the Twitter we know and love today that's, 60% of the accounts on are bots or something crazy like that. And it's just really weird watching this relationship between Twitter not quite entirely certain about whether or not they want to have it or they don't because they like being talked about and they like having all that attention. They like having the inflated view counts to, false advertise to our marketers about how many views are actually things are getting. But it's really weird because from the very beginning, Twitter has basically been a vehement supporter of having automation on it. It's just whether or not they brand it as that is really weird. And this history rarely gets brought up by the journalists with stuff because I don't think they have long enough memory about these things. But it's really weird watching essentially come back to the forward and say, we like bots now, but wait, we don't. It's strange.
So the next one is... Yes.
Hey Tyler, are you hoping to finish at the top of the hour, or can I go back
Go ahead.
one headline, or just your time? Yeah, I have an angle on this whole Omni TV thing from
Yes.
Amazon, and I have to say, like, much as as you guys know, I just love Best Buy. I just love it. I don't work there anymore. I just love the culture. I love the people. I love the friends. I just made my, it's kind of part of my, but they got screwed here, right? And they always, this is what happens. It happened with Netflix way back, right? At one point, by the way, Best Buy owned 15% of Netflix. I don't know if anyone knows this, but
What could
behind the
have
scenes,
been?
we had a minority investment in Netflix because we had a distribution deal to sell the subscription, the video, the deliver the video,
DVDs.
the DVDs in the letterbox. Yeah, the letterbox business, right? So, and these are nice bounty deals that retailers love, right? And this is happening in, by the way, in financial services too. The bounty deals are, can you get me a new customer? And the deal that Best Buy has with Citibank is, and all these old banks do that. So these retailers have bounty deals. And so the majority of the time when we see these headlines that retailers have out there, if they're really, really smart, they're doing a deal where they're actually getting the data, right? And they're actually getting in their Trojan horse. But what Amazon does brilliantly is that they come in and they say, look, 3 years ago, Best Buy struck the deal. Oh, by the way, there's an exclusive brands business that Best Buy runs, which is they've got their own brand of TVs, right? Insignia. It's actually one of the I don't know the numbers today, but one of the top selling brands in the U.S. Full stop, right? Like most people have Insignia TVs in their houses, at least a second TV or a third TV. And so this is like a house brand. I mean, they own it. It's a business that I ran for a bit back, out of China. We literally had a $5 billion exclusive brands business, and then they struck a deal 3 years ago. And so there's a headline I think I put out there from this headline yesterday, but they're with Amazon where they would do Insignia brand TVs with Fire on it, et cetera, et cetera. And so Amazon's been working with Best Buy, learning this whole freaking game, right? And now they've decided to do it in a way that they'll get the data. But guess what? Even then, they've given them a lucrative deal, a lucrative bounty deal, like X margin on each television, which the merchants just lapped up for short-term profitability, I imagine. Where now they're going to sell them at Best Buy. So you're basically selling. Netflix did this. We sold Netflix. We made Netflix in a sense way back then, and then they had all the customers and all the data. So I have an angle on that. I think it's just still this is happening. I don't know if they've done something better, and I give them a benefit of the doubt, and I might put in a call. But it just looks like Amazon again has just like Trojan horsed their way into. So all these TVs are going to get sold by Best Buy, and the customer goes to Amazon.
Who controls the relationship? Yeah, it's like with the delivery drivers. Can at the end of the day, in any partnership, somebody's holding the wallet or the customer relationship, and got to be very careful with that.
I wonder what the milkman delivery routes were like, back in the 30s or whatever. They were this aggressive about customers and everything.
So, yeah, I mean, look at how McDonald's with their land, and that was wild. Watch that movie, The Founder. Holy shit, that's a genius movie.
I had to watch that movie with things. I heard the newspaper delivery routes. They probably had similar things. The paper boys essentially like all bitching over different routes and stuff like that. I mean, it's like we have a lot of tech aggression going on here, but there's a long tradition of this in other industries.
McDonald's was.
They learned the same tactics.
I was a paper boy, and I crushed all the other paper boys in my town, and they had to create a special rule about it, about basically not I was basically like I was broken up by the equivalent of like the antitrust committee when I was like 12, 13. My brother and I, in our town of Milton, Massachusetts, ran the entire Patriot Ledger circuit and then tried to buy other people's paper routes. It was very fun. I gotta say.
Was it a bunch of parents that got together or something? What's the committee?
Yeah. So what I did is I would basically wait and offer discounted prices of the of the paper to people. Basically, the Patriot Ledger costs like $3 a week, and I was like, I'll deliver it for no tips at $2, so as a loss, and then nobody could really compete with that because I went to all like the nursing homes and all those kind of places, and then I raised prices after I bankrupted everybody, and it went really well. It was a lot of fun, and it was written about at the time when way back when, I guess 20 years ago now.
The old Japanese model. So the the next one up is this one, that Apple Music will use Shazam's tech of identifying pieces of songs to ensure proper royalties for DJ mixes. Get ready for a lot of new content on the streaming service, it says. DJ mixes are most absent from premium streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music. And
the samplers.
That's mostly due to the fact that properly sorting out royalties for all the samples is a nightmare. You can find them on platforms like SoundCloud, but these songs can have literally hundreds of rights holders between the DJs, original artists, labels, and even a festival or venue. To remedy the problem and to massively expand the amount of DJ mix content on the platform, Apple worked with both major and independent labels on a system that identifies and directly pays rights holders on a mix. What's more, the company leveraged Shazam's technology to do it for Apple Music. Apple explains that its new tool will let the streaming service ID and compensate individual creators in a DJ mix, even artists who recorded any sampled tunes. It's also the first major streaming service to do so, in collaboration with DJs themselves, alongside festival clubs, promoters, curators, and independent labels. The company says it's working with all parties involved to ensure fair compensation. Apple says it will give DJ mixes a longer shelf life when it comes to revenue, since individual tracks, collections, and compilations, and even full festival sets will be available to stream like studio albums on Apple Music. There are thousands of DJ mixes on Apple Music already, and the service says it's adding more all the time. The company has already commissioned mixes from Black Music Month and Pride, in addition to housing content from Tomorrowland's 2020 and 2021 digital festivals. Thanks to the new system, there's about to be a lot more to choose from.
For people that want a really fun variation of this, there's a band called Girl
Oh
Talk.
my god, I love Girl Talk's fantastic.
Yeah. But just imagine, like, for a typical 20-minute little piece right there with things, and they basically sample hundreds and hundreds. The technical challenge of identifying every single one of those, contacting them, getting the licensing thing from the lawyers, essentially negotiating each one of those just for a single track. I mean, good frack. You almost want to just say it's like, that's just a different.
The challenge with the challenge with Girl Talk specifically is he's doing mashups where he takes two songs simultaneously and plays them on top of each other, and these mashups are not going to work with Shazam. Shazam's not going to know what to do when you have.
It would be, you'd have to have someone do their PhD type kind of level of music analysis AI kind of thing. But oh man, the results would be incredible. Yeah. If you could do that, here's a cool part. So Shazam works on a simpler variation of just a fingerprinting hash, but there are some newer techniques you can do for characterization with stuff. But what's really, really, really fun is that they could basically change with some of those newer GAN type algorithms, or the OpenAI the jukebox style thing that can characterize it. That also means they could generate it, which means we could get some new Girl Talk music, which would be great.
So next up is a new startup called Whatnot. A live streaming service for buying and selling collectibles is raising new capital at a valuation of $1.5 billion.
Money laundering never looks sweeter.
This is the first official live shopping app I've seen in the U.S., and its investors are Andreessen Horowitz. So here comes a live streaming shopping, and in this case, they're starting with collectibles.
Like digital NFT?
No,
I'm sorry.
Any kind of physical collectible items.
What? Like comic books or like
right, Beanie Babies and whatnot. So, Whatnot's raising new capital at a valuation of $1.5 billion. I've never even heard of this app, and it's already at $1.5 billion.
Do they have some of the Softies crowd in there or something?
Live streaming. Selling e-commerce, for those who have been following us for a while, I've been ranting endlessly about how this is is the be-all end-all, coming to the U.S. very soon, and here's the first one that I'm aware of that's actually branding themselves as a live stream shopping app called Whatnot. So I have to download that and give it a spin. The next one's from the Wall Street Journal, that Doordash, Grubhub, and UberEats are now suing New York City for its law, which is capping the amount of commissions the apps can charge, say that the law is harmful government overreach. And I think it's pretty much as simple as that. Yeah, New York, and now what's the other city that's trying to put this into place? San Francisco, where they're saying, hey, you as a company cannot charge more than, I believe it's 15% commission, where they were previously charging 20-ish. So DoorDash, Grubhub, and Uber division, the Uber Eats division, are suing New York City over its law permanently capping the amount of commissions the apps can charge restaurants to use their services. The latest move in a growing clash between the platforms and local regulators. The three largest food delivery companies filed the suit in federal court in New York late Thursday, contending that the fee cap is harmful and constitutes government overreach. The limit on fees has cost the companies hundreds of millions of dollars combined through July, they said in the suit. The permanent cap will likely require them to rewrite contracts with restaurants, reduce marketing in the city, and raise fees for consumers, the company said in the complaint. The companies are seeking an injunction that would prevent New York from enforcing the fee cap ordinance adopted last month, unspecified monetary damages, and a jury trial. Councilman Mark Gionage, the chairman of the city's Small Business Committee, which has pushed for more oversight on the apps, said that the council intends to move forward with the fee limits and other restrictions of the services. These laws simply seek to bring fairness to the system that all too often lacks it, Mr. Gionage said in a statement Thursday evening. The companies are suing New York amid heightened scrutiny from local regulators across the U.S. after the COVID-19 pandemic fueled a broad consumer shift to the platforms. Many restaurants adopted app delivery to stay afloat last year, and some cities instituted guidelines around fees to help them survive. Left unchecked, the ordinance sets a dangerous precedent, the company said in the complaint. So we will see. There will be an update, and it does mention San Francisco's Board of Supervisors enacted a permanent 15% cap per order on food deliveries fees in June, the first city to institute a ceiling with no end date. The apps have also filed suit there. Yep. They're going to have to change their business models, basically.
You can sue, apparently, if your business model isn't working anymore.
Yes. The apps can charge restaurant commissions as high as 30% per order. New York City temporarily capped what apps could charge restaurants during the pandemic. Last month, it made the cap permanent, saying that the food delivery companies are prohibited from charging restaurants more than 23% an order, 15% for delivery, 5% for listing on apps, and 3% for credit card processing fees. That means Grubhub, which often relies on restaurants fulfilling deliveries received on its app, would be limited to an 8% commission on such orders.
So they set price ceilings and price floors with stuff. I mean, this seems like, pretty classic, government regulates something, companies complain, consumers go back and forth.
They'll just have to retitle what the fees are. They could just call it a, service charge, and reclassify the amounts. So the next one,
or just do what the telecom industry is doing, just make up bullshit stuff and throw it on there essentially, and hope no one notices, or if they do, just say sorry.
Yeah, look like your phone bill, all these mysterious mini charges.
There was one recently. I don't know if it might have been DoorDash. It might have been another one. That was something confusing the wrong ones, where they were calculating out like the tips and stuff like that, but then the calculations were wrong on the thing that they handed out for the final bill, and they realized that this was intentional. It was like some really shady stuff.
So an update. The next one is breaking news. According to Kuo, the world's biggest Apple leaker, Apple has resolved its Apple Watch Series 7 production issues and will start mass production mid to late September, with shipping set for late September, which they will announce Tuesday in the live stream that we will watch here in Tech News Around the World together. The next one is that Jio and Google delay the Jio phone, which was planned to launch on September 10 in India, blaming chip shortages. The launch is now scheduled for early November, and this is no ordinary phone. This is a full-featured, nice smartphone for about what is it, $75, something like that.
Nice. That's impressive.
And that's why India is crazy excited about this, and a lot of big tech companies are too, because a $75 smartphone in India means another 200 million new customers to sell to.
there are some hilarious articles on like villages that essentially are being hooked up to, they've got the solar power now, they've got the toilets with things, but the elders are pissed because their kids essentially have these new devices they're just playing Fortnite all the time, and it's like this is corrupting our society, and it's like, well, they're not wrong, but come on, Fortnite's a lot of
The
fun.
next one is a company called WiseTrack, which facilitates buy now, pay later services for in-person business transactions, raises $45 million. And buy now, pay later is growing globally, with various companies expanding to and in different parts of the world, such as Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And now there's another player called WiseTrack. And the next article is actually about America's buy now, pay later company called Affirm. Affirm beats in Q4 with $261 million, up 71% year over year, with 7.1 million active customers, up from 5.4 million the previous quarter. Stock up more than 20%. And full transparency, as I've said previously, I'm an Affirm shareholder because it's one of the only buy now, pay later companies that's publicly listed. And so they had a 30% price jump a week and a half ago when Amazon announced they were going to be using Affirm to allow buy now, pay later on Amazon. And now they've got another 20% jump on their quarter earnings report. The next one is from Reuters, that Box stockholders, the cloud hosting company Box stockholders voted to re-elect 3 board directors, including CEO Aaron Levy, who's one of the funniest people on Twitter, giving a blow to activist investor Starboard, which failed to win any seats. And that's something that should be discussed more in Silicon Valley, and that most people using tech apps don't understand. There's often interesting activist investors trying to take over these tech companies, and they're rarely discussed outside of dinner parties in Silicon Valley, but it's an interesting aspect of tech culture that most people are unaware of. So
I think Paul Singer tried to take over Twitter at one point. Didn't
I don't.
There was something like that.
There was. I recall there was a Twitter takeover attempt a few years ago. I don't remember who the activist investor was in that case, but the next one is from Vice. They say they have a report that since 2004, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Twitter have earned $43.8 billion in contracts with the Pentagon, mostly in relation to the war on terror. So why is the Pentagon paying nearly more than $40 billion to big tech platforms? The team of researchers have published a new report detailing how Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and Twitter have profited from the global campaign of violence. On Thursday, researchers from an advocacy and research group called Little Sis, Action Center for Race and Economy, detailing how big tech has profited immensely from the war on terror over 20 years. The report lays out how tech companies have increasingly pursued federal contracts and subcontracts with America's military, intelligence, and law enforcement agencies after 9/11. Indeed, from 2004 to today, contracts between the federal government and major tech companies such as Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Twitter have exploded in number, the report found. From 2007, which is when they all kind of started, to 2019, Department of Homeland Security contracts and subcontracts, for example, with Silicon Valley giants have increased 50-fold. Amazon and Microsoft have benefited the most from these increase. From 2015 to 2019, Amazon saw a 400% increase in federal contracts, while Microsoft enjoyed 800%, and I imagine that's for their cloud companies. The report also found that Google netted, Google's a cloud company as well, while Twitter secured only 255,000. Yeah, leave Twitter out of this. They're not a cloud company. Since 2004, 5 government agencies have spent at least $44 billion on services from those 5 technology companies. The lion's share of that is from the Pentagon, followed by Department of Homeland Security, the State Department. And our research is finding that because there's an immense amount of profit to be made from U.S. government contracts, the tech is aligning its priorities with U.S. priorities, whether that be national security or the global war on terror. The biggest issue we are trying to unravel here is that big tech is a major feature of the global war on terror and increasingly becoming so. In order to dismantle the global web of violence that is the war on terror, we must hold them accountable for that. Silicon Valley owes its existence to efforts stretching back to World War II and the Cold War to leverage military spending, state intervention, and protection from competition in the form of early grants, contracts, and government-backed monopolies. I don't totally buy that. There's some truth to that, but this is a great example of how tech is not neutral. It's actually been very key in the building out of the post 9/11 regime that criticizes black and brown people, says Jessica Quiason, Deputy Researcher Director at ACRE. Big tech has always held the line that they're neutral, but we've seen time and time again that this is not true. They're building tools, and the application of those tools is very specific. The post 9/11 regime was all about surveilling Muslim people, and let's understand that DHS, CBP, they're so far beyond targeting Muslim people. It's Black Lives Matter protesters helping put kids in cages at the border, Latin folks. They're targeting black and brown people and immigrants everywhere. According to the report, as big tech has increased its contracts with the federal government, it has also managed to edge out traditional military contractors such as Raytheon and Northrop Grumman, which have seen their contracts stabilize or decline in numbers, but that's for a totally different reason. Vice, what are you doing here? You're conflating totally separate issues here. Out of the 5 companies that report focuses on, Microsoft seems to be enjoying the coziest relationship with the federal government because it has a huge fucking cloud, and Microsoft saw ties with DHS skyrocket as demand for more cloud computing infrastructure. Exactly. Well, thank God you're actually looking at what they're spending the money on. It's called cloud computing. You're totally misconstruing the relationship of these tech companies with these government agencies and how they're using this tech. Big tech is just letting them use cloud. It's going so far as the quote that you provide about them targeting, putting kids in cages and Latinx folks. You're going way beyond what's really happening here. Vice, what are you doing? You're giving journalism a bad name here. Why are you trying to put these puzzle pieces? They're forcing puzzle pieces together that really don't fit together here.
Well, the argument that they make is that if our government actually gets its stuff together when it comes to confronting challenges, because that's ipso facto racist or something of that form. And Clearview has gotten a bunch of contracts from CBP. I believe majority minority workforce. Now, minorities is not exactly right.
The CEOs of Microsoft and Google are brown immigrants themselves. What the fuck are you implying exactly?
I think we're going down a slippery slope. I mean, I think that, yes, we can look at color, but then I think typically we don't use the caste word, when we're describing the populations within the US, but there are different types of oppression, and it's not always necessarily tied to one's skin color, but rather to the shared cultural experience within the context. So I would imagine that would be the differentiator between brown people who might, be in leadership positions in big tech companies versus brown and black people who have whose ancestry and lineage goes back hundreds of years, and there's been a cycle of oppression, and so those experiences are different even though the complexions might be similar.
I mean, fair enough, but there are several hundred, actually I think it's like 600, 700 people from the January 6th situation that were sort of put there by facial recognition, and they're largely working class Scots Irish, many of whom have mental health issues, and so I think technologies are always developed to serve a need, and unfortunately, in a lot of cities in America where a lot of crime takes place, a lot of these technologies are developed there, and that the crime that takes place in those cities does not reflect it's pretty Hispanic and pretty black, unfortunately. We can go into why that is, but that's sort of how the technologies wind up getting developed. And in the case of the border, it's there are technologies deployed on the northern border and southern border, and a lot of the technologies that are deployed on the southern border get more use because there are more people from the south, the global south, trying to come into the country that way. So anyway, I mean, I just think there's a lot of this sort of like demonization that tries to take place people working on these kind of technologies to deprive them of the best talent. And I should say, like, before things like like Clearview came along, like the government used facial recognition, and the facial recognition they used was from companies like NEC, which were Japanese companies, and they trained their facial recognition on Japanese faces, and that led to more black and Hispanic people being wrongly identified by their facial recognition products, which is partly that and the fact that it's Japanese companies, partly how I and others have isolated them and removed them from a lot of contracting, though not all. And so I think there's a lot of the solution to racially biased programs because of their data is to just collect more data. But of course, people then are like, oh, you can't collect my data, and it's like, all right, well, do you want a law enforcement that is cheaper and more nimble, or do you want just to let law enforcement make its own determinations, and they'll have their own biases and their own issues? So it's one of those situations where it's very frustrating to work in this space and be libeled essentially by these publications that don't really know what's going
So
on.
the quote,
That's fair. May I just
sure.
put an asterisk on something? So I agree with a lot of what you were saying, Charles. The one thing that I do want to call out is that, when you contextualize the people that were, arrested or identified with the January 6th incident, you characterize them as being mentally ill. And I guess, but then when you talked about the crime that happens in cities where brown and black people are disproportionately identified, that same nomenclature was not applied. And yeah, I mean, different topic for a different room, but I just want to call out the fact that yes, there may have been people who had mental health conditions in January 6th, but there are also mental people who are dealing with, mental health conditions and in some cases generational trauma in other communities. So I just wanted to just draw that
I
line
would
of
just
thinking
say,
there.
in the case of a lot of the crime that we've seen since we passed bail reform in the United States, the evidence, and there have been a number of papers about this recently that have come out. One was on the front page of the Houston Chronicle the other day, that was done by one of my colleagues, and the Bureau of Justice Statistics is doing interesting work here. But in the case of a lot of the crime that's really affecting quality of life issues in our major cities, a lot of that is organized crime, which of course requires a higher level of cognition. Now, that's not to say that a lot of the people who are participating in that crime, are necessarily, not suffering from mental health issues. They probably are. And for what it's worth, I favor genetically sequencing, everyone, but especially prisoners, because I think it's really unconscionable to put, all people in prison without actually knowing what they're suffering from and what their mental state is. But yeah, I take your point. And in many cases, I would say, like, all the more reason we should have law enforcement with facial recognition to identify who these people are, because oftentimes, we have drugged out people or people who have, mental health issues or family issues or whatever. And right now we're in a situation where law enforcement, initially reaches for their gun if they're in a chaotic situation. Sort of suicide by cop is a very common thing, unfortunately, in our cities these days. And we should try to figure out how to treat these people so that they're not, destroying our cities and destroying themselves in the process.
Okay, there's one quote in here where it says, the person they're interviewing says it's acceptable for big tech to do these horrendous things to families at the borders. That somehow big tech is responsible for what the government agencies are doing at the borders. And this is the error in the whole concept here, which is that big tech is providing cloud hosting. That's what when you look at the money that these agencies are spending with Microsoft and Google and Amazon, it's cloud hosting. It's the equivalent of disk space on the computer, which a few short years ago, before cloud became possible, you had hard drives, in your computers, and then you started building closets full of hard drives, array of stacks of servers, and now those servers have moved to the cloud. And you can, with this money going to these cloud providers is for storing of information. This is not these cloud providers are not doing horrendous things to families at the borders. So please stop conflating, people paying for disk space with atrocities at with minorities. This is just really dangerous, an error, you know, intentional,
I would say
intellectually
it's a
dishonest twisting of what's actually happening here.
I would also say it's a slur against the people who are operating at the border too. Many of whom are non-white, most of whom are Hispanic in the case of the southern border. And there's this idea that there are all these families at the border. I mean, U.S. efforts on the part of some of these activist groups to actually make it illegal to actually genetically sequence the children that are trafficked at the border by coyotes and by others. And so one wonders oftentimes, like, who these people think they're actually speaking for, given that oftentimes, they're backed up financially by competitors of would-be big tech products. And I think in a more recent case, there was a major fentanyl dealer that was apprehended at the border, who was non-white, who was apprehended by 10 different officers, all of whom were non-white, except I think one. Not that it matters, because they all take an oath to the Constitution. But this idea of like racial bean counting. I mean, look, I'm sympathetic to people who are south of the border. My girlfriend's father was an immigrant. My ex-wife is an immigrant. There are many immigrants that have made America their home. But this idea that we should like somehow countenance and remove technology from one of the largest mass human smuggling operations and human trafficking operations, it's just really unconscionable. And I wonder, like, what do these people want us to do? Just let drug traffickers, and I mean, what do they want us to do? Like, somehow like not do anything? I mean, how is that going to work long run for the survival of this country?
Okay.
One the funny thing
I
is, I just quickly want to share, like, I don't know how many of you have got the global entry. Historically it's been, you put your whatever, like your passport, and then it reads up, and then you put your fingers, and that's how it used to be recognized, that through the machine, and then you just simply walk out. You don't see any human being. Now, the last time, like literally about 2 weeks ago, when I came in, I didn't have to do any of that. It just press the button on the screen, look at the camera, it took my picture and printed it out. So it was just the pictures. So the facial recognition has gone to the level where it actually brought out my whole profile, which flight I was flown in. So just on that angle, I mean, if there there is a brown skin or black skin, it could actually go on the sideways and come the cross on your paper, and
Yeah,
then you have to
you're
go see
welcome,
it.
by the way, Kiram. You're welcome. I mean, I think about all these people who waited in line, at the border or elsewhere, coming through customs, and all the time that was spent, waiting before global entry or before facial recognition, and then all those hours that were stolen from people's lives because we didn't use technology. And I think it's really unconscionable. Like, people want us to go back to the abacus or something. I mean, it's very strange.
Chris, I'm all for it. I'm just bringing in the
So what?
perspective. So yeah, that's like I'm all for it. I just walked out, but I had to wait for an hour and a half for my luggage to arrive. So
So
that's
Facebook is developing a
John,
machine learning chip for tasks such as recommending content to users. That's interesting. So that's the end of the big boring headlines, and now I got to blast through all of the fantastic tweets that everyone's found recently. And like this one from Tomoko SoftBank to build a startup campus in Japan. Also planning to launch a fund to boost new domestic tech companies. So it looks like SoftBank wants to see more happening in Japan. Makes sense. One of the centers, so they're trying to build a physical startup campus, basically. Yeah. I guess I should talk with Masa about that. So the next one is from Kinsha about mRNA cancer therapy now in human trials after shrinking mouse tumors. That's amazing. So an mRNA cancer treatment developed by BioNTech, the makers of the Pfizer vaccine, is being tested in people after shrinking tumors in mice. And it's hoped to repeat the success of its mouse trials. Holy shit. An mRNA.
BioNTech just apparently said that they're gonna go for approval for the vaccines for 5 to 11-year-olds now.
But I wonder if this this mRNA cancer therapy. It says the cancer treatment that uses messenger RNA, mRNA, to launch an immune attack on cancer cells can completely shrink tumors in mice and is now being tested in people. Messenger RNAs, mRNAs, they have risen to fame with the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. BioNTech, the German company that developed the Pfizer mRNA COVID-19 vaccine, is now testing whether mRNAs can treat cancer, and as it did in mice. Now they're testing it in humans. And the question is, if they do work, if they do shrink cancer tumors in humans, what will the anti-vaxxers say? Because this is essentially an mRNA vaccine for cancer. And if it proves in labs that it does stop cancer, will there be anti-vaxxers with cancer who refuse to take it for fear that it does something else to them? Like, I don't know, give them cancer that they already have.
It's a
I
really
mean,
good question, Tyler. I mean, because I think people who would be labeled as anti-vaxxers, they're psyching themselves out, right? So I think that if they're not careful, they will develop a deep distrust for
Well,
modern
here's the thing.
medicine.
mRNAs are going to enable, you're going to see an absolute Cambrian explosion of mRNA vaccines for every fucking disease we have ever even heard of, and many we have not. And they will generally work. Coming up with the COVID vaccine was, difficult, but mRNAs are now going to enable to address in a Pandora's box of vaccines for seemingly HIV. There's an HIV mRNA vaccine coming out in trials now. There's this human tested now cancer vaccine. You're going to have all the diseases are all going to have. And so what is the anti-vax community going to do when there's now mRNA solutions for every possible disease?
well, the issue is it depends, right? Like who you are, right? I mean, there was just a study the other day showing that for young men, there's 6 times the likelihood of myocarditis of getting the Pfizer BioNTech shot, right? And so like the idea of mandating that shot for the U.S. military is something that a lot of us oppose, and it's not like these companies, these drug companies, pharmaceutical companies haven't made serious errors in the past. I mean, we could go through a litany of those companies, right, that have made mistakes. Now, in the case of cancer trials, or in the case of HIV/AIDS, I mean, there's a compassionate care argument that could be made, right? That you already have cancer, or you already have HIV/AIDS, or you're likely to develop those things based upon your genetics. That's a different thing than, of course, mandating these things, right? I mean, many of the so-called anti-vaxxers, for one, like there are lots of doctors in Britain and elsewhere that have made the argument that the Pfizer shot should not be approved, and they've instead done things like AstraZeneca and J&J. And increasingly we see the evidence. There's a study in Israel recently. There have been other studies as well that have come out warning about the issues of these mRNA vaccines. So I think the jury is still out. It just depends who you are. Now, if you're in your 60s, 70s, and older, like, yeah, go ahead, like, be free to do these things. But 100 million Americans now that are affected by this mandated one-size-fits-all approach. I mean, I instructed my lawyer today that like we will not be complying with it at any of the companies that I own, and I will go and litigate it all the way to the Supreme
What
Court of the United
the
States.
mandate is to give people the choice between a vaccination or a COVID test. So why are people so?
No,
Oh, it's
No,
not.
no, no, no,
not anymore. No, it's
no.
just the shot. And
I
by the
heard
way,
I heard it from Joe Biden's mouth himself. That was what he said in his statement. So how did it get twisted from what came out of his mouth?
the executive order has just the shot. Now you can pay yourself to do all the testing, right? For for some of these firms, or if you're doing a government contracting, you have to pay for all the testing, which you have to
If your
constantly
firm
test your
is over
employees.
100 employees.
Yes, if you have over 100 employees, or
Right.
if you do business with
I
somebody
should play the
over
Joe
100.
Biden audio clip from yesterday where he says if you have more than 100 employees, you will have to either have your folks vaccinated or tested, meaning COVID testing, which means that the option.
But for the federal
Uh,
employees, they don't have that
okay.
choice.
Yeah, for federal and for federal contractors. So that
Which is over 2
includes,
million.
yeah, that's right. So in the case here, they're not giving any health exemptions. They're not giving any religious exemptions. So from the Biden people I spoke to tonight about it, they said what they said was that they will, view is that they fully expect to lose in some sense when it goes and gets litigated in the courts. But in between now and then, they'll have vaccinated a big chunk of the population. Which, by the way, I don't think for everybody. But this idea of everyone having to get vaccinated, I think, with these shots, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And by the way, this is this is in the cultural context of hundreds of thousands of Americans dying because of the opioid crisis, which was strongly prescribed by doctors, strongly encouraged by CDC and FDA. And, there's all sorts of corruption there. And, the Sacklers, of course, killed all these people and are allowed to keep their money. So I do think we should be kind of mindful that,
Charles, this is a
government doesn't
vaccine,
always know.
right? I mean, the comparable to opioids is, I get a lot of your points, but this is a vaccine, right? It's a
Right,
different
and the
thing.
same arguments that were made about opioids, right, and how it's non-habit forming for the general population was in fact
A
true.
vaccine is not habit forming. I'm not a doctor, but
No, no,
maybe I
no, you're
got that
missing the
wrong.
point I'm making, right? So the point is that there were all these unintended consequences of a government, in league with the modern pharmaceutical industry. There were all these unintended consequences of that
Oh yeah, no,
policy.
I get that point.
That's
Yeah,
my
I get it.
point.
So
So we need like, I mean, we've seen what happened with things like Theranos, right, where she actually used a political pressure to try to get, blood testing in the state of Arizona, where there are patients who actually suffered because of it. So this idea that there isn't some sort of unholy alliance between industry and government, it's just not true. I mean, there's very much a revolving door there, and I think this year Pfizer expects to make $33 billion in profits. I mean, we used to describe that as profiteering in states of emergency and states of war, and now of course it's going to be mandated, and of course you can't sue if you have an adverse reaction, which they do admit that there will be adverse reactions for some parts of the population. So I just think and there's a reason, by the way, our allies in Britain, there's a reason that they were ahead of us on lab leak, and why they're ahead of us by 10 years at least on genetics, because they have decided to remove the profit motive largely from healthcare with their NHS, and they have a lot of standards that we would be wise to implement here in the United States.
the no, I get your point around the big business, obviously. But the bit on the UK, I just want to clarify. I mean, this full steam ahead here on vaccines, by the way.
Yeah,
And they're
AstraZeneca is.
they're reviewing it this week. They're reviewing whether the kids get it before they go to school, and potentially, even mandating that. So, I mean, and this is a conservative government. This is Boris's government, right? So, they're pretty aggressive on the vaccine here.
No, that's right. I
I
mean, I was just in the UK. I was there for 3 weeks, and there are questions about if you have antibodies present, whether or not you need to be vaccinated. There's also testing that's allowed in the UK. Something I learned when I was there. So there are a lot more sort of optionality in the UK than there is in the US, increasingly, especially dealing with the government. I mean, I don't understand why we're not like Germany or France or Russia, where if you test positively for the antibodies, you don't have to get any shot. Like, why is and particularly when I think Bloomberg reported just recently that if you have if you have natural immunity, that's actually a better protector than some of these shots.
Okay, so
Just to piggyback on what Charles is also saying is that um, I personally, the word of anti-vaxxers, I really hate when I hear that, because I'm waiting to hear this out. I'm waiting to see what the results are, and what the research and how time is going to prove this vaccine effective or not, because it is proven that there are a lot of people that may have adverse reactions to it, and there's no going back to it afterwards. So I don't have any issues with vaccines. I've had vaccines throughout my life. I've had them before I had to go on trips to overseas, to the Middle East and other parts. So when someone if I'm waiting this out to see what the test results are, and usually, there's a usual 2 year, 24 month uh, a wait before until they get some kind of an idea of what the results are. And before that, I mean, they themselves, the doctors, will say really to prove something, it could take anywhere between 5 to 10 years to fully understand what's out there in the market, and that's true, to getting the answers of how the people are reacting to it. So if these mRNA vaccines are out, just like Charles said, if someone, it depends. If someone, if I had an illness that really, it was either taking the potential of a vaccine that can help me or cure me versus death that's near my door, or worse illness, I'll probably take it. But for something that is that's going to get forced on people on a an incomplete vaccine that still hasn't been fully tested, that fully checked out and fully seen the results for, and I can't hold anybody accountable for that. There's a reason why some people wait for it. So when I hear anti-vax, it really, I cringe, because I get vaccinated. I've got no problems with it, but I'd like to know what it is, beforehand. And more and more doctors are turning back. I mean, we've got Nobel Prize doctors that are going back. We've got the former vice president of Pfizer himself coming and saying, with 40 years of experience, I'm saying that this vaccine is not for everyone. So it's a wait and see, and also take care of yourself and hope that you don't get the illness. And 98 and 99% of the people that do get it do pass it um, with strong antibodies in their bodies afterwards. So it's when I hear someone saying the anti-vaxxers, I'm not an anti-vax at all. And I will be the first one to get on the vaccine line if it's something that I know for sure it's proven correct, then it's going to help me. But anyway, that's going to be a longer discussion, sir. Sorry.
So
I,
yes.
I just wanted to say one thing, because actually the mRNA vaccine has been being tested for like many, many years. The misconception is that like the technology of the mRNA vaccine is something completely new. It's not. It's been being tested for a long time. And in terms of COVID, like the number of people that it was tested on is like hundreds of times bigger than any other vaccine tests that ever came before. So actually, this is like one of the safest vaccines that you can take. I just wanted to add that.
No,
Yeah,
no,
can
no,
I?
no, no.
Can I?
It's not.
Can
It's not
I?
a 10-year
What?
longitudinal
No,
study.
but can.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I just do one thing, Charles? Here, I think, and Tyler, if you don't mind, I'll just take it. I think there are rooms that we run where we actually have full populations of people with the data, etc., on both sides of this specific discussion. I wanted to, and I just feel like it'll probably gonna go into my data, your data, my inside information, and we owe it to like 300, 400 people that we do a good job on that. But I just wanted to say one
He's
thing
back,
factually.
everybody.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to say on testing, just test kits, which is a more practical thing for everyone, like whether you got a vaccine or not. Just going into school. What I'm really impressed with, which I rarely say about the NHS, some things here, but what I'm really impressed is that in the UK, and Charles, you might know this, but we get free tests. Like my wife just ordered, 4 sets of 7, lateral flow tests that just the government just sends you. You have them all the time. They just come. You don't pay for anything, and then you just take it. She's a teacher. She takes it in the morning, and you can be more confident. And a lot of teachers do, and they all like share their information, and they're fine. They get tested. I just went to a parent-teacher association meeting last night for my son, and they recommended we all just took it. It's free. It's there. I mean, like it's and so that free testing. I don't know how other systems in the world work, but testing is helpful that way, at least for us to get on with life and
You
stuff.
guys,
But
you
anyway,
guys are
That's
crushing
great.
it. You guys are crushing it over there. I mean, I was blown away by just the sheer competence of the British system, and I mean, I think there's so many things to learn there, and there's so many. I mean, I was dealing with my kind of British counterparts, and of course, they were first to say the lab leak hypothesis was true, while CIA and others were wrong. I mean, something like the majority of the COVID sequences in the world, right, have been produced by the United Kingdom, which is just incredible to think about, just like how small a country it is and how much it punches well above its weight. And I should say for people who are interested in this topic, Genomics England, which is sort of the equivalent, it's sort of like their premier genetics kind of outfit there. They are hosting an event on September 29th where they're talking about COVID and genetics and the genetic underpinnings of COVID. and my entire team is going to be attending that virtually. But yeah, I mean, Cal, like Britain doesn't do a lot of things really well, but like this, they're really killing it, and it's really impressive to watch, and there's so much to learn
And
from.
and you're right, Charles. And schools, people care about, one last comment on this, just on schools, because I really care about schools and kids, and a lot of people have kids here in the audience and stuff. We're opening up schools, and testing is a big part of it, and hopefully it works. Let's touch wood. We got to get people out there and connecting with each other physically, and obviously online learning works, but I hope it works. But testing seems to be like just making testing accessible, lateral flow or whatever new test that comes along. I know here in Oxford they're doing stuff on saliva stuff. A couple of guys were pitching on that and stuff, but just more testing so that we can actually just say, hey, you walk in somewhere, you're safe. I wish they just test people before they get on a flight
I
immediately
think
and
that's
get
a
a
great
result,
idea.
right?
I think
Things
that's a
like
great
Hey,
that.
idea.
So
you want
yeah.
so you want to hear my experience, Cal? I've been sick since last Thursday. I've done 5 lateral flow tests on my own dime. They cost me $30 for 2. I needed a PCR test because, I'm still sick. And I go to the state one. I don't know. I've been checking for 2 days now. There's still no answer.
Oh, by the
I
way,
just
the largest testing frauds took place with Curative, which got $1 billion in federal government money. And of course, it was front page of LA Times. None of the tests really worked. And of course, they tested our U.S. military. They tested the intelligence community. I mean, the shocking amount of incompetence in the U.S., particularly in California, where Chris is and where I've spent a lot of time, it's disgusting. And it really is like, I mean, people should be should be fired for this. And the way in which the U.S. government and our medical professionals have decided to throw in and get into bed with China rather than our closest ally, Britain, which actually knows what they're doing on all these things, is just really sick. And it all comes down to all these people who are making all this money from the relationship between the pharmaceutical industry, the U.S. government, and of course China as well. And Britain is like world class, and I think anything we could do to bring the British system to the United States. And I'm now commie pinko type. Like I'm very much not of that stripe. But Britain is like really right on how they do this stuff, and we have a lot to learn from them.
I
I
must
Make
say
gotta
I
that
just
agree.
want
yeah.
to,
Also
can
with
I add?
Cal.
I just wanted to add that I really must say that this is an area where, since Sweden and Scandinavia is criticized a lot, and especially Sweden in large parts of the handling, this area is amazing here. They are incredible. It's so easily accessible. Lots of the government institutions, and which is a lot, including television, etc. Wherever you go in, tests are available. Tests are free. And if you have the slightest symptom at home, you get a taxi to your door with a test, and nothing is it's all accessible without a cost. So I think that system is really working well here. I just wanted to add that.
And I got to
Maybe
tell
I
on
you,
just
I'm
want to
here in
add that. I
Istanbul.
just want to
I'm
add
here.
that.
I'm sorry. I just wanted
Sorry.
to say this. I'm here in Istanbul right now, and there has been, so a lot of people suddenly within a couple of days it got very cold, and a lot of people got colds and maybe some flus out there, and people just started lining up, and I think that's wonderful, Cal. From what you're saying, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people want to know that they are healthy. And if they have this fear of the possibility, and a lot of them are already vaccinated and they know that the vaccinated are also getting the virus again. So, people are lined up in the hospitals here, and my cousin being one of them, and we all thought that she had all the symptoms and so forth, and she went in the first time they didn't take a test. It said, most likely you're fine. She had to go back again, but the ability to get tested so fast and so quickly, it immediately puts these people at ease, and there's this fear campaign that everyone is. I mean, on the mental status of the people also to be able to get tested and weekly basis if they need to, if they have to for work purposes or travel, then it kind of puts them at ease. And we're forgetting that we've got almost 400 million cases of flus and colds every year. That didn't disappear. So a lot of people can be put at ease, and which is exactly
Yeah,
what's
you're
going
right.
on
You're
over
right,
here.
Netta. You're right, Netta. And here's the thing with the young people, because I've got a 20-year-old as well, and I try to learn from them. But they're just like my daughter was just showing me how they're going out for a meal or something, and they have this term for, because it's free. The test is free. They send it to people's homes, right? You
I
can
think
actually
it's wonderful.
go to Boots Pharmacy here in the UK. and just to walk in, like the kids. So my daughter said, "Oh, we're all just going to walk in there and get tested before our meal." And they call it a Latiflow or something. There's some hashtag Latiflow. Have you done your And that's cool. It's free, right? Some things have to be, you know. I'm not a socialist, as Charles probably knows, and everyone. Some things have to be centralized and have to be sorted out. And this is where I disagree with a lot of stuff in Singapore, and a lot of discussions that we've had in the past, where Cheryl would have this kind of to and fro about, chewing gum and a whole bunch of things. But some things matter, right? And I've seen it in evidence here that this part of the NHS, this specific part, works because just in behavior of young people and behavior of everyone, and people just feel more, as you said, Netta, more confident with each other, and they don't blame each other, don't put each other in boxes. Yeah, I imagine a lot of them are vaccinated or not, but but are vaccinated in the UK. But that's not the discussion. It's, are we safe at this point in time, and do we feel confident? And I think
Cal,
free helps.
Cal, a quick
I
question
just want
here.
to add that,
And
vaccination in general actually is really, like, I mean, I personally travel a lot of African countries and even Asian countries. You should see our book, my husband and mine, that we get the typhoid and the tetanus and all those things. And even some people who forget and how sick they get. And even how many kids are being saved by vaccination, just in general. My husband actually forgot his vaccination book, and traveled to Kenya about 3 years ago. And they wouldn't let him out of the airport because having yellow fever in most African countries is a requirement. Otherwise, they don't let you in. So I just wanted to say that it's just COVID became a huge global pandemic that's really doing a lot of damage. But some vaccinations have been a requirement and a mandatory for many countries. I just wanted to add that. And I think the life saving they're doing in Africa is just amazing, and different things. The Bill Gates Foundation, as much as what we talk about it here in Africa, I can see it myself, how many millions of kids it is saving. So I just want to put that out in general, how vaccination save lives.
Cal, a
Can I
quick
make a comment
question.
here, please? I think that while a lot of what goes on in the UK and the US and Sweden and in general Western countries is obviously quite nice in many ways, just the sheer number of deaths in the West are just absolutely shameful. There's nothing to celebrate here. This COVID has been a test that the West has failed miserably. We are like, if you look at the bottom countries in terms of deaths per million, the West is like all the way at the bottom. We're not, and we can congratulate ourselves because our friends also failed the test. But it's all losers. Nothing to celebrate here.
I
Thank you.
fully
Well,
agree.
thank
I
you,
fully agree.
Shaheen.
And if we understand also the schools, I mean, I can state here, death rates is terrible, and we might have looked at 6 months back. It didn't look good, specifically in the UK, And then of course, if I look at countries where you had month or even over a year, the school closed, where and still having the huge death rates, so that a lot of decisions were made, which just were absolutely wrong decisions, and did not work. And a lot of nationalism then pushed through regarding the vaccination, where the vaccine comes from, and then back and forth. So this has divided the world in a big way. And also, I fully agree to your comment, Shine, that a lot of governments have really miserably failed. Now they're saying we're all over, and the vaccines are so great, and everything else is for free. I'm lucky on the Swiss side. We had 4 weeks the schools closed, only 4 weeks. The rest always open anytime. Not nice on the development, also on the death rates per capita. Of course, a small country and a rich country, but again, in the same way, I believe there's nothing to celebrate. I mean, we can all breathe that it looks better now, and that the vaccines are actually seen to work, at least take a certain risk out of it. But I fully agree, and you can see at different countries how different countries have reacted, and some of even the poorer ones have, the more marginal ones have done a great job, and some others were just miserably failing.
I totally agree. There's never going to be anything that's celebratory about this. I think when most of us speak that it is, I'm assuming that by default this we all feel this is a terrible disaster, and no, it's every single death is horrific, and also we don't even know the avalanche of long-term effects. It's a terrible and mental effects of people being home. And here in Sweden, we have quite a lot of alcohol problem already before this, and kids who are being in their homes. That's not at all a necessarily good environment either. I think this is, of course, by default, a horrible thing, never to be celebrated, just to overcome.
I think, though, we should be very careful at judging our governments too harshly, because obviously we know now, like I think there have been 40 some odd papers now about the genetic, underpinnings of this virus and how some people get it
Oh, I'm
worse.
sorry. That's a non-starter. That's an absolute
No,
non-starter,
I mean, it's
We
absolutely.
we are at the bottom of the class. There's no excuse.
Oh no,
We
there's
should have we
there's
should
plenty.
have known more. We should have done better. We should have been on top of it. And on top of it,
I mean, would you support genetically sequencing the
it's
entire population?
it's
I mean,
irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
no, it's not
Thank you.
irrelevant.
Well,
It's in fact entirely the case. If you look at the case of
oh, you're just
Britain,
saying the test
right?
was hard, so we failed it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, the test was hard.
No, no,
The
no, no.
test was
You're
rigged.
missing what I'm saying.
Winners win,
No, I'm
losers
not saying
lose.
that
End
at
of
all.
story.
No. I'm saying that there are certain subpopulations in our societies. Many of the people here who are of Indian heritage, for instance, have a much higher death rate than do people who are of Swedish heritage, who are also present here. And that is just a fact. I mean, pretty much every reputable medical establishment from the UK, from Sweden to Denmark to Holland to the United States, even Canada has done its own longitudinal, its own study here. I mean, yes, like it's unfortunate that lots of people died, but compared to what? I mean, if you look back at history of the pandemic of 1918, death rates are much lower than they were there. And again, it depends where you are and what kind of situations you're in. Now, we don't want to have this conversation in the West because a lot of people in our society, like morbidly obese, have comorbidities, have all sorts of other health issues. That where is Michelle Obama now? Where's the Let's Move
Hey,
campaign
look,
that could actually save a lot of people's
nearly
lives?
700,000 deaths in the U.S. There is no
You,
excuse. We should have known about it. We should have moved. Yeah, there's no excuse. We failed. We're at the bottom of the class. And so what if
With
Italy did too?
with all due respect, Shane, and then Charles, I see where you're going. You have good points about the genetic testing, but you're talking about are they going to accept any kind of genetic anything, right? And I don't want to say the word they because it's so polarizing, but like to everyone's point, like when they talk about 1918 and they talk about the flu, they say they don't want to talk about it anymore because of how they treated each other. It was so much shame how they treated each other
Chris,
that
the
they
U.S. is
don't even want to
21
talk
from
about
the
it.
bottom. The U.S. is the 21st from the bottom.
we're one of
Italy
the
is the
countries,
16th from the bottom.
we're
Belgium
one of
is
the
the
few
15th
countries
from the
that
bottom.
reports our numbers accurately and fairly too.
Okay,
Let's
now
be honest about that.
right, maybe you want to argue that it really wasn't about 700,000 deaths either.
We
But
we
the
just
fact of the matter is that we failed, and there's no way to dress it up.
No,
we
I mean, when you fail something, it's important to know why you failed and to have a conversation so as to avoid
Well,
the
I
issue
think
in
you
the
have to
future.
accept that you failed first, which I don't think you're doing.
I mean, I would say that the United States, given its racial and ethnic population, had about the number of deaths that we could expect for a country that does not have a national healthcare system.
I hope
Yes.
you are generous with
Charles,
your other judgments.
are you really for real making that statement? There's to me there's a narrative here that you are perpetuating, wrapped in really delicate wording, but the narrative doesn't bear out to the reality. I appreciate some of the things that you throw out and share, but there's an underlying narrative through your conversation, to your speak, that sometimes is really hard for me to swallow. And that's the reason I don't come up on stage very often, but I continue to hear this and I go, because having people that have been in the government and they live and breathe USA without wanting to acknowledge our mistakes and our pitfalls and use data to support a particular narrative, I just really find
No,
is
I mean,
not reality. Let me
I made
finish,
the argument. I mean,
Charles. Let me finish. I didn't
yeah,
talk
go
over
ahead.
you.
Go ahead.
Let me finish. Thank you very much. If I say something that's going to trigger you, hold it until I finish and you can respond. Thank you very much. Because I am triggered right now. So I just want to get this out. Is that there's this underpinning narrative that USA. When I meet people that deal with the type of sensitive data that you deal with and run in a certain league of individuals, is that there's a narrative about the data and those people. When I hear people say those people, I don't understand who those people are. There are different races, there are different ethnicities, there are different groups, but those people is like a grouping that is so much of a that speaks out to not really understanding. You got the data, but you don't understand. And I just really would wish you would understand that it's okay for us to admit as United States citizens, as the government, that we make mistakes. We don't have all the answers. We have failed. We failed really terribly with this pandemic in many ways. And I don't care what data you pull up because we can get data to support both sides. I just want balance. I mean, if you could do that for me, you would have a friend for life. If you could give balance in how you present stuff and not a particular underlying narrative, because it's there. Whether you want to admit to it here on the stage or not, it's there. And I don't mean to attack you, but you speak up a lot. And therefore, you're the only person that I can come to address with this. Thank you.
Well, what an interesting point. The US and the UK have nearly identical deaths per million at 1,990 per million. So
right.
it's
Right. And what is the largest ethnic group in the United States? British. Just something to point out. I mean, we're similar peoples. We'll have
yeah, but so
similar
they have
results.
more Indian percentage than we do.
Correct.
But I mean, my point is that culturally we're similar, genetically we're rather similar, and we had similar results. Just so I think the performance is pretty much similar between the two. I think all things
Indeed.
considered, it speaks to. I don't know that the UK or the US. The really shocking one is Peru on the deaths per million. They are way out on their own, like way. They're double the next, which is Hungary, and that's quite an anomaly statistically. Why do they have 6,000 per million? The second highest would be Hungary with 3,000 per million. That's
because they
But
haven't done
Tyler,
anything.
look at how many
For to
Western
mitigate it.
countries are in the bottom 30.
yeah. Peru,
All of them.
Hungary, Bosnia, North Macedonia, Czech, Bulgaria. So it's a lot of the
Belgium,
Yugoslavia.
Italy, Croatia,
Yugoslavia, Hungary dominate
USA,
the worst five, basically. Bulgaria.
yeah, Poland, UK, France, Spain. It's all the West. This is a test that the West
If we
collectively
count in
has
South
lost
America,
for
because
various
also in the top
reasons.
20 you have Brazil, Argentina,
Of
Colombia,
course you do.
Paraguay,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Mexico. So it's a whole.
Of course, of
It's
course. It's not like you can uniquely lost it, but the bottom 30 is littered with Western countries. So what's going on there?
a lot of travel. It's a lot of the developing world.
I think it's also a lot of not paying attention. It's a being too confident, making the wrong
Listen?
decisions.
I,
Individualism,
I,
exactly. Not a
I,
collective way of, forcing people to vaccinate or whatnot. But it's nevertheless a test that we've lost. And I think it behooves us to find out why. So next time it happens, we can win this.
Shahim, if I can, and I got sidetracked because I am sick. What it really like? We've just been getting inconsistent information from the beginning, and it's guised under having complete control of the situation. Like easiest thing was masks, right? Early on, when this crisis was happening, there was a little bit of a run on masks, and all of a sudden, the government saying you don't need masks, you don't need N95 masks, especially N95 masks You're not smart enough to use an N95 mask. Are you properly trained to use an N95 mask? And then you don't even need masks. And then, it's not until April, May when they tell us, oh, guess what? You should probably start wearing masks now. And so, like, they treat us like children that don't have any self-awareness or any ability to critically think for themselves because they've designed the marketing system for that reason.
Well, I think you're
How about
partially
the
making my point
denial,
that we need to
early
find out what happened,
early
why it happened,
denial?
and how we can prevent it next time.
I
This
How
is
agree
about
with
the
really
you,
early
not to
Calvin.
just like,
denials, Chris? How about the early denials? I mean, I remember Johnson, in UK, running around shaking hands, and that it was no big deal until he got sick himself and almost died. Or Trump saying that this is nothing, this is flu, it's gonna go away and stuff, while the whole virus was getting hold. And even botching the testing. I was in the US. I got actually sick COVID symptoms very early on, and I couldn't get the test. So I isolated myself in one of our rooms for weeks until I got tested. But imagine that everybody else running around with the symptom and passing it. So we botched that as well. So I think identifying the early mistakes so that we can correct them later on is also another thing that would
The
be helpful.
the thing is, though, in Asia, mask use has been just well accepted, and it's just a courtesy to the other human being that you're trying to be out there in society with, because you're just projecting your your
right.
germs
So,
everywhere,
but
right?
these are all the things that we need to fix. But it sort of starts out with acknowledging that the problem is there,
I
and
was
it's
I
true
was
that,
really I
yeah.
was really sick in 2019, and this was very memorable for me because I had a friend, and she was going through a tough time, going through a divorce, and she's like, "I need to come over to your house. I'm serving the guy," and we were so sick, and I'm pretty sure it was COVID. And the thing in my note to her was, "We'll wear a mask, no big deal." Like, meaning we will wear a mask for her sake, you know. And that's just my experience from being in Asia, because that's what they did to get rid of SARS, right? And so, like, for me, logically, it was like, okay, these prophylactic measures work. Maybe they're not 100%, but they definitely show that they can reduce transmission significantly. And we just never get treated with the proper information. And to the other side of the argument, you know, President Trump, and I will always call any former president, uh, he had Operation Warp Speed, and the other side was saying we won't touch a vaccine that President Trump puts out. We don't trust it, and so it's just been a challenge. Everybody, we'll figure out how to get through this,
Yeah, yeah,
but to survive
Chris,
it,
I'm not making a political thing. The administration did a lot of the right things. They also did a
nobody's
lot of the wrong
perfect, right?
things.
Yeah, I
And as
agree.
a country, at the end of the day, our grade is a failing grade. That must get fixed. End of story.
100%.
Yep. Okay. So we got to blast through some things here. Did Florian has Florian started his room yet?
I think they delay by
Okay.
another
Okay.
20
They
minutes.
can go ahead and start it. So just a bunch more to get through here. One from Nicholas about there was a comment made in China about cracking down on VR, and so now the headline is that the Chinese metaverse, the companies that are developing and innovating within the metaverse, their stocks are tumbling based on state media warnings and regulators' attentions on VR. Then the next one is from Dr. Fran from the Washington Post. The Washington Post coming out with a rather heated headline calling Xi Jinping's crackdown on everything is remaking Chinese society. The far-reaching campaign affecting industry and individualism comes as the leader prepares for a contentious third term. The next one is from Tomoko in Japan, from Wall Street Journal, that according to the Wall Street Journal, China launches initiative to set global data security rules. China is launching its own initiative to set global standards on data security, countering U.S. efforts to persuade like-minded countries to ring-fence their ring-fence their networks from Chinese technology. China is launching its own initiative to set global standards on data security, countering U.S. efforts to persuade countries to ring-fence their networks from Chinese technology. So they're trying to push back against everyone banning Huawei and et cetera and Chinese technologies. Announcing the initiative on Tuesday at a Beijing seminar on global digital governance, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi cited growing risks to data security and what he characterized as efforts to politicize security issues and smear rival countries on technology matters in an apparent swipe at Washington. To counter such charges, it's important to develop a set of international rules on data security that reflect the will and respect the interests of all countries, Mr. Wang said, according to a transcript of his speech published by China's Foreign Ministry. The Wall Street Journal reported on Monday that Beijing planned to unveil the initiative. Beijing's initiative comes amid heightened tensions with Washington over issues including trade and technology competition, which has raised the specter of increasingly bifurcated internet. And that this is a really wild concept, by the way, that geeks everywhere are and should continue to pay attention to. This, that basically China has an internet. They've created their own sort of private internet, and the rest of the world is using the internet, so to speak. And it's geeks, like I would even say myself, have watched with keen interest as to how China might include others in the Chinese internet, especially its bordering countries, like Afghanistan shares a border. And perhaps the Taliban would be very happy to have China come in and provide all of the infrastructure and include the Chinese internet, which might be tailorized for a Islamic state, a republic, as they plan to make, which would block any references to, things that they might find sacrilegious, for example. So Hong Kong as well is an interesting one, where we're starting to see the beginnings of China pushing and reducing kind of freedom of speech within the internet within Hong Kong. So eventually Hong Kong will likely adopt the Chinese mainland internet, Macau as well. And that's so. In recent months, the Trump administration has taken the Trump. What is this? A super old headline? What is this? No, it's from yesterday. What does it mean, the Trump administration? In recent months, the Trump administration has taken steps to curtail what it describes as national... What the hell are they talking about? The Trump administration. This is a Wall Street Journal article. In recent months, the Trump administration has taken steps to curtail what it describes as national security threat. I'm super confused. Oh no, who sent this in? Somebody said this is... It says September 8th, 2020. Sorry, this is an old article. Let's go ahead and skip it. Tomoko, this was from Tomoko. Tomoko, すっげえ古いな。1年前ぐらい。So,
I was like, hey, gotta tell her, I was like, what kind of nightclub
yeah,
did I take?
yeah, I'm like, what? The Trump administration. So, is Johan still with us? No? Yep.
Yeah, he's on
Okay.
the phone.
He's got one that he needs to comment on. Katerina sends in one about artificial cells master a process once only done by the living. An NYU-based research team created microscopic cells out of a polymer that can do active transport, a process all living cells do that is difficult to replicate. But now non-living cells are replicating. It's a really interesting article, just tweeted that out. And Fast Company has one about a very cool new specialized electric delivery bike. These are popular in Europe. Americans really have never seen these. And I bet these become very popular for doing deliveries in urban environments, as they are in Europe and in Asia, where it's a bicycle, but the front end of the bike is very long and can hold very large packages. So it says there's a dirty secret in the delivery business. Delivery vans are fast, but cargo bikes are faster, up to 60% faster at navigating cities to deliver packages, all without emitting any exhaust. And so why not make electric bikes, e-bikes, for delivery? And you have to see the design of this bike. It's genius. And it can carry almost as much as a small van, but it's an e-bike, and it can zoom around the city. It's truly genius. So tweeting this one out from Fast Company to the Tech News Twitter account, and makes it. What's the next one? You don't need that one. The next one is how foil wrapped homes survived the Calder, California fire as everything burnt around them. And there's now photos of a house that was wrapped in looks like aluminum foil, which saved the home from burning to the ground while everything else burnt around it.
Y'all laughed at me. Yeah, y'all laughed at me.
Yeah, cover them with aluminum foil. But you can make not your tip. You can use typical home aluminum foil, it appears, but you could buy the longer, like 3-foot rolls, and just wrap your house in aluminum foil. And apparently, the homes that were wrapped were not wrapped by the owners of the homes, but by the fire departments themselves.
Because during the fires, what happens is, it's just those little embers that get in there and the eaves and stuff that start the fires. So if you get the embers to not hit the eaves, you can prevent the fires. It's a great idea.
Yep. So the last one is that from Wired that the Texas abortion whistleblower website still can't find a host because GoDaddy kicked them off. And now even the most extreme internet infrastructure providers have turned their backs on the website for violating their terms of service. Under recently passed Texas law, private citizens can sue anyone involved in helping a person receive an abortion in the state. After the 6 week of pregnancy in response, an anti-abortion group called the Texas Right to Life set up a website designed to collect anonymous information about any alleged infractions. Or at least it tried to. So far, no company is willing to host it.
Looks like someone's going to have to roll their own server.
Did I read an article that the federal government is going to sue Texas for this law?
Yeah, it's likely to be challenged.
Yeah, I think they're doing it. Oh, by the way, Florence room
but
is open.
Okay, thank you. But even if somebody makes their own server, that more importantly, they're going to have to learn how to secure it. So,
it's just going to get.
It's going to get. I know that. That's going to be the penetration testing on that thing. It's going to be brutal.
Maybe it'll be in Hillary's bathroom, huh, Charles?
They're going to have to do something clever to protect it. So that's it. We're now going to.
They should just start their own internet, right? I mean, isn't that what they should do?
They will. They will need to do their own hosting, yeah, because I bet Amazon won't host it, so it's going to be interesting. Yes.
Hey, Tyler, are you aware that Affirm was up 20%?
Yeah, we read that headline about 40 minutes ago.
I was half asleep. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, because
and Tyler is smart.
Yeah. It didn't hurt me. As I've said, I have it. It's a bittersweet, scenario for me personally.
Yeah, this is just a quick. There's a big argument. Like I see Cheryl's DMs and all this about.
There's no
it's going to be no. I mean, let me finish a sentence. That it's going to create the next credit crisis, etc. These are people spending. There's no leverage of it. Sure, some of these kids might be spending more than they have, but another day, another argument. I'd love to have it. I've been looking into it. Maybe later today if I can pop in. But this is not the subprime crisis. Ken, I know you've sent me a couple of notes on that. I have a point of view on it. I think it's.
I want to hear your point of view because I know Best Buy used to do things like this.
No, but I tell you what, I do think that there are going to be losers on this, and it's the banks.
The Visa, yeah, that Visa and
today, Citibank still does Best Buy's credit card right now. These used to be HSBC. It's Citibank. It's a lucrative deal. Trust. I'm not going to give you the numbers here. It would actually affect you deciding whether you buy Best Buy stock if I gave you the numbers, because it's a lucrative, like every attachment, Citibank, or now Citibank, but it was HSBC when I was there, they would pay a bounty, right? Again, bounty, right? That's an old game. And I think the game's changing. So there's a bigger thing going on. And of course, everyone's going, oh, all these kids are not going to be able to pay their money back. They're going to be defaults. There'll be consolidation. But anyway, I want to have that discussion. Tyler, you said there was one or two things that if I came in when I had the time, that's one.
We can have it.
Yeah.
Sebastian,
we got to go.
What do you think, Cal? What do you think the strongest argument against the argument you just advanced was? Like,
regulation? Maybe there's no, it's regulation. Basically, you get a bunch of politicians leveraging it to say, hey, I'm going to care about these poor little kids. Well, deal with student debt, for goodness sake,
No,
right now, or anything
kids.
else.
It's not just
I mean, if you
student
read the
debt
history
that
of
lives with
Visa,
them forever.
I
Student
mean,
debt that follows them forever.
the history of Visa is basically being in bed with the U.S. government. So I don't think they're going to just take it lying down.
Okay,
You
so you're
know,
saying protecting. Okay, that's nice. Okay, I love it. This is why I love tech news. We can go into all this, but I don't want to take it,
No,
Tyler. I
it's
know you're
good.
moving on. Sorry. Yeah.
Sebastian from Klarna, I think, has defended this better than anybody, saying they use actual data. They monitor every transact on a per transaction basis to make sure people aren't getting themselves in over their heads financially.
Yeah, that's Klarna.
Yeah, you could. So yes, hopefully all the others do as Klarna's done. If they want to continue, if they don't, they will likely get themselves in trouble, and by extension, cause a black mark on buy now, pay laters generally. But thus far, anybody fear mongering is doing so without any real evidence. So we don't have any real reason to. It's certainly not worse than traditional credit cards, which is what Sebastian points out. Is on actual credit cards? Oh, credit card debt is if you want something to worry about what already has been existing for many decades, which is how credit cards work today. You don't need to create phantom worries about something that there's no indications of happening yet.
But you know that Klarna has more things running with Kronofogden in Sweden than all the other credit cards companies together.
Say that again, Johan.
Klarna has more issues running against clients with Kronofogden. I don't have any British term
The
for it.
collection agency?
Kronofogden, the collection agency, than all the other credit card together. They have more than MasterCard, Visa, American Express, Dyna, and the other ones together. They have that alone. So I beg to differ, but this is not part of this discussion.
But what's the essence of the complaints? Are they all similar? Or are they all different?
It's not complaints. This is that Klarna needs to go to Kronofogden to actually get the payment from the ones they say
Collection
yes.
don't
agencies.
arbitrage.
Yeah, got it.
And this is a high trust society like Sweden, right? I mean, that's sort of the larger question is this.
That's a good finding. It's good data.
Yeah,
local as well.
Charles makes a great point, which is I always did question, would this model work outside of Sweden? I mean, it's wildly popular in Scandinavia, but it is a unique society.
Yeah, I don't think it works in low trust.
I always wondered that. I mean, it seems to be a global phenomenon now. It'd be interesting to see how they deal with it on a global basis. Okay, so
Anywho, let's move to
tech inclusion news around the world with Florian and JP and Messi and Hans are all already over there. So we will see everybody there and hope we're back here next time. Have a wonderful Friday, everybody.
Welcome back.
Yes,
Cal.
thank you. Good to see you, Cal.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Welcome
Yeah,
back, Cal.
it's good. My hair's
You
coming
can
back.
feel the hair coming back. That's nice.
I
You